The classroom was quiet, but my mind was racing. Our homeroom teacher, Li Ming, stood at the front with a serious expression. He told us we had 3 months until the college entrance exam. It was time to choose our path, the liberal arts or the martial arts track. If we chose martial arts, the registration fee was 30,000 yuan. We had 7 days to hand it over. 30,000. I stared out the window, the number echoing in my head like a death knell. I worked hard. My martial talent was decent, and my blood vitality was among the best in the class. But 30,000 yuan? I was just a student. Even with my part-time jobs, there was no way I could scrape that together in a week. After class, I followed Li Ming to his office. My voice felt small as I asked if I could have a few extra days to pay. He looked at me with a sigh. I knew he liked me. He knew how hard I trained. In our class, I was ranked in the top 10, but our class was just a standard 1. Usually, only the top 3 had a real shot at a martial arts university. For a kid like me, 30,000 was a fortune, and it might end up being a total waste. My situation wasn't a secret. My parents died in a beast tide when I was 3. Since then, I'd lived with my uncle, Su Guoming. He had 2 kids of his own, and they were both training too. Supporting 1 martial artist is hard enough for a normal family. Supporting 3 was nearly impossible. Su Hong, it's not that I don't want to help, Li Ming said gently. But rules are rules. I can't give you an extension. He suggested I could train at a private dojo instead of going to a university, but we both knew that was a lie. The resources at a university compared to a dojo were like heaven and earth. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out. Standing outside the school building, I looked up at the sky. I'd been in this world for 18 years. It looked like my old world, but everything changed 300 years ago. A star seed fell from the heavens, bringing martial arts back to life, but it also brought monsters. The world's barriers shattered, and alien races invaded. Humanity fought back, pushing the front lines into the celestial battlefield, but the war was still raging. When I first crossed over, I dreamed of becoming a supreme warrior and crushing our enemies. Now, I was being defeated by a 30,000 yuan entrance fee. Su Hong, what are you staring at? Let's spar? It was Chen Lin, my best friend and seatmate. I shook off the gloom. There was no point in sulking. I headed to the gym. We trained until the sun went down and the moon took its place. The gym was packed with students sweating and gritting their teeth, all chasing the same dream. In a quiet corner, a dull thud echoed. Chen Lin stumbled back, clutching his palm and grimacing in pain. Damn, Su Hong, your Vajra punch got stronger again. Don't tell me you've reached the micro level. I nodded. A couple of days ago. Martial arts mastery is ranked from beginner to mastery, then micro, great success, and finally perfection. Chen Lin gave me a thumbs up. We started learning the Vajra punch at the same time, and he'd only just hit the mastery level. He was exhausted and starving, begging to go eat. I let him go, but before he left, he leaned in close. You know about the underground fights? He whispered. I frowned. I'd thought about it. It was a gray market where martial agents fought for prize money and people gambled on the blood. But those fighters were killers, vets who hunted monsters for a living. Even if their rank was low, their combat experience was lethal. Students like us usually didn't last a minute. I'm not crazy, Chen Lin laughed. I just meant we should go watch. You in? Maybe, I replied. He left, and I stayed. I trained until midnight, the gym empty and silent. After a quick shower, I walked home through the deserted streets. The moonlight felt cold. I felt lost. I reached my apartment, an old, run-down place, and paused at the door. I could hear my uncle and aunt talking inside. The rent is due in a month, my aunt said. We're still short 8,000. I heard a heavy sigh. It was my uncle, Su Guoming. I'll find a way. Don't tell the kids. Especially little Hong. His exams are coming up. Don't let him worry. I leaned against the wall, my heart sinking. I heard the registration fee for the martial arts track is expensive, my aunt continued. Tens of thousands. Silence followed, then the click of a lighter. My uncle was at the window, smoking. Maybe I should stop my medication, my aunt whispered. It's not curing me anyway. We can save the money. The other 2 are in middle school now. They need to eat well for their training. I can go back to work. No, my uncle snapped, his voice firm. Your health comes first. Don't even think about it. I stood there in the dark hallway, listening to them sacrifice everything for a future I wasn't even sure I could reach. I realized then that I couldn't just wait for a miracle. I had to do something. Don't skimp on the food for Xiaohai and Xiaoming, my uncle said softly. Just buy what they need. And the registration fee for Hong, we have to pay it. He has the best talent in the family. He has to keep training. My aunt started to protest, but he cut her off. I'm here, Su Guoming whispered. I'm the head of this house. I'll find a way. Just don't tell the kids. We don't want to wake them, and Hong should be home any minute. I stood in the dark hallway, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath, forced a smile onto my face, and pushed the door open. I'm home, I called out. The living room was cramped and dim. My uncle was sprawled on the sofa, and my aunt was holding a pungent medicinal plaster. The moment they saw me, the exhaustion and worry vanished from their faces. They beamed. You're back, my uncle asked, trying to sit up straight. How was practice today? Great, I lied, flashing a grin. I'm making huge progress. I walked over and took the plaster from my aunt's hand. Let me do it, Auntie. She poked me playfully in the forehead. Look at you, trying to steal my job. This is my husband, you know. We all laughed, the sound echoing hollowly against the thin walls. Once the medicine was applied, my uncle patted my shoulder. He told me to get some rest so I wouldn't be tired for school. I joked around, asking if he needed me to carry him to his room. He raised a hand as if to swat me, laughing as I dodged and ran toward my bedroom. But as I closed the door, I saw him through the crack. He stood up, winced, and immediately grabbed his lower back. His face contorted in pain. My aunt rushed to support him, her eyes full of heartbreak. I shut the door silently. The smile fell from my face instantly. Our apartment was tiny. 1 living room, 1 bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. My uncle and aunt had 1 room. I shared the other with my younger brother, Xiaohai, and my little sister, Xiaoming. We had 2 sets of bunk beds. The siblings shared one, and I had the bottom bunk of the other. The top bunk above me was just a pile of old junk. I tried to be quiet, but as soon as I crawled under the covers, Xiaohai's voice drifted down from above. Brother? Are you awake? I'm awake, I whispered. Then Xiaoming's head popped out from her blanket across the room. I'm awake too. I sighed. You too should be sleeping. Brother, Xiaohai said, his voice unusually serious. I want to quit school. My heart skipped a beat. I sat up abruptly. Why? Is someone bullying you? No way, he scoffed. I'd break their noses. I want to help Dad. I'm stronger than him now. I can help him move crates at the docks. Me too, Xiaoming added in a small voice. If we both work, Dad can rest. And I'm actually stronger than Xiaohai. I could move more than him. What did you say? Xiaohai snapped, his pride wounded. You heard me, she whispered back. Want to go right now? I sat there in the dark, listening to them bicker. They had heard everything. They were ready to throw away their childhoods just to give me a chance. Forget it, I said, my voice firm. Go to school. The family's problems aren't for you to worry about. But brother, Xiaohai whispered, our talent isn't as good as yours. If we work, we can support you. You can get into a martial arts university. Once you become a real professional warrior, we can just relax and let you take care of us. Yeah, Xiaoming giggled. I'll just stay home and be lazy. I'll make you buy me everything. My throat felt tight. They were being so mature it hurt. It felt like a wall was closing in on me. I already have a plan for the registration fee and the rent, I said, forcing confidence into my tone. They both froze. Really? Of course. I smirked, spreading my arms wide. Do you know what talent looks like? You're looking at it. You think I've been training for nothing? They looked at each other, eyes bright with relief. They were still just kids. They wanted to believe me. I kept up the act, joking and teasing them until they finally settled down and drifted off to sleep. Once their breathing turned heavy, I got up. I stepped out onto the narrow balcony and leaned against the railing, staring at the moon. I pulled out my phone, the screen spiderwebbed with cracks. Talent, I muttered to myself with a bitter smile. Maybe, but it's not enough. I searched for the underground matches Chen Lin had mentioned earlier. I stared at the prize money listed on the screen. The numbers were high. It was dangerous, maybe even suicidal for a student, but I didn't have a choice. My Vajra fist was nearing the micro level of mastery. If I risked it all, I might have a shot. If my younger siblings were brave enough to quit school for me, how could I be a coward? I had to do this. The moment I made my decision, a cold, mechanical chime rang inside my head. Ding! Undying martial heart detected. System binding successful. I froze. I had lived in this world for 18 years. I had long since given up on the idea of being special. Ding! Newbie gift pack opening automatically. Ding! Congratulations. You have obtained the talent, Eternal Peerless. Ding! Skill Vajra Fist has reached micro-level mastery. I stood frozen on the balcony, my eyes widening as a surge of power and knowledge flooded my brain. The system was real, and in a single second, everything had changed. My eyes locked onto a few key words on the screen, a heart of unwavering dance. So that was it. A complicated smile tugged at my lips. Maybe I had this system all along, and I just needed the right spark to wake it up. But unwavering was a heavy word. It was easier said than done. If I hadn't heard my uncle and aunt talking tonight, or seen my siblings willing to give up their dreams just to lighten the load on my shoulders, I might never have found this do or die mentality. I took a deep breath, forcing my racing heart to steady. It was time to see what this system could actually do. As I scrolled through the interface, my eyes grew brighter. The functions were incredibly powerful. To put it simply, if I defeated or killed an enemy, even a ferocious beast, I would gain dance points. I could use those points to increase my blood chi, my skills, and more. Open system panel, I thought. A sleek, translucent screen appeared before me. Name, Suhong. Talent, Eternal Peerless. Blood chi, 85 plus. Mental power, 23 plus. Constitution, mortal 3% plus. Skills, Vajra Fist, micro 7% plus. Floating light palm, proficient 35% plus. Skystep, entry 56% plus. Dance points, 0. There was a plus sign next to every attribute. That meant I could upgrade anything as long as I had the points. My blood chi was at 85. It had only gone up by 3 points in the last month. I was getting close to the quasi-dancer rank, which required 90 points. A rank 1 dancer needed 100. Then, my eyes widened at the mental power stat. I couldn't believe it. In this world, besides dancers, there was another path, mentalists. They could control objects with their minds. It was a terrifyingly powerful path, and maybe 1 in a million people had the potential for it. Now, my system was telling me I could actually upgrade my mental strength. I forced myself to stay calm and kept looking. The skills were expected, but then I saw Constitution. I remembered reading that everyone's body was different. Just like talent, some people were born with special constitutions that let them cultivate at lightning speed. There was a plus sign there, too. Does this mean I can evolve my physical body into something legendary? My heart hammered against my ribs. I took a moment to settle down before clicking on my talent, Eternal Peerless. What did that even mean? A description popped up. Throughout history, talents have come and gone. The possessor of this talent is first under heaven, ancient or modern. There is none who can surpass them. I stared at the words, completely stunned. Number 1 in all of history? I didn't feel any different. But then, I tried to think back to the problems I used to have while practicing the Vajra Fist. Suddenly, those unsolvable issues felt incredibly simple. It was like looking at a complex puzzle and realizing it was just basic addition. Everything became clear, direct, and obvious. My throat felt dry. This feeling was incredible. I turned my thoughts toward the floating light palm and the sky step. A thought bubbled up that I couldn't suppress. Why is this so easy? Was I actually an idiot before? It felt like being an adult asked to solve 1 + 1. You don't even have to think. The answer is just there. I needed to test this. There was an open space in my apartment complex. I vaulted over the balcony railing, instinctively activating the sky step. Previously, at the entry level, I could barely kick the air to slow my fall. I lived on the 5th floor. I figured 1 air step would be enough to let me land safely. But something went wrong. As I stepped out into the empty air, it felt like I was stepping on solid concrete. A loud, explosive boom echoed through the silent night. I didn't just drift down. I shot upward like a rocket. In a single bound, I soared past the roof of the building. I landed on the roof's edge and looked back down at the ground, then at my feet. I was speechless. My building was 8 stories high. With one entry-level step, I had jumped 3 stories up. What the hell? Is this for real? I muttered. Suddenly, notifications pinged in my brain. Skystep, proficient. Skystep, micro. I stood there, frozen. I only moved once, and I jumped 2 mastery levels. I took a sharp breath. Now I understood what Eternal Peerless meant. Skystep was only a rank 1 skill, but jumping from entry to micro in a single breath was insane. If it worked like this for Skystep, what about my other skills? How long would it take to master the Earth rank Vajra Fist? 2 breaths? Before I could celebrate, angry shouts erupted from the apartments below. Who's setting off firecrackers at this hour? You crazy bastard. Let people sleep. If I catch you, I'm going to kick your ass. I scratched my head, feeling awkward. The boom from my Skystep must have woken half the neighborhood. Time to go, I whispered. I leaped off the other side of the roof. This time, I moved carefully, descending floor by floor with light, silent steps. I hit the ground like a feather and slipped toward the complex gates. The security guard was already nodding off in his booth. I looked back at the old, decaying buildings. When I had come home earlier, I was drowning in worry. Now, I felt like I could take on the world. Just give me a little more time. I can solve everything. My uncle won't have to work himself to death. My aunt can get her treatment. My siblings can stay in school. And I'll have the entry fee for the martial exams. With my Vajra Fist already at the micro level, and this system backing me up, I had every reason to be bold. A few minutes later, I arrived at a nearby outdoor training ground. It was past 2 in the morning, and the place was deserted. I had been training all day, but the adrenaline was pumping so hard I didn't feel a hint of exhaustion. I noticed 2 new machines standing near the edge of the field. Rank 1 combat power testers. They measured a dancer's striking force and gave a numerical value. These ones were built to handle anyone up to a rank 1 dancer. In this world, we were ranked apprentice, quasi-dancer, and then dancers from rank 1 to 9. Rank 7 was the level of a grandmaster. I walked up to the machine. It was time to see exactly how much power I was packing. I stood before the rank 1 tester. In this world, the path of a martial artist starts at apprentice, then moves to quasi-dancer, and finally to the ranked dancers, from 1 to 9. A rank 7 is a literal grandmaster. But rank isn't everything. Your true combat power depends on 2 things: the grade of your martial arts, from F all the way up to SSS, and your mastery of them. It was time to see where I stood. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I funneled every ounce of strength into my Vajra Fist. Boom! The machine let out a dull thud. The digital display flickered, numbers climbing rapidly before finally settling. 1020. I'd broken the 1,000-point barrier. I raised an eyebrow. Usually, a dancer's combat power is about 10 times their blood vitality. With my vitality at 85, a score of 1020 meant I was punching way above my weight class. I was already hitting as hard as a rank 1 dancer who wasn't using any techniques. That was the power of the Vajra Fist. I pulled up my system panel. My Skystep had reached the entry level with just 1 kick earlier. I wondered how the D-grade Vajra Fist was doing. When I looked at the mastery bar, my jaw dropped. Vajra Fist, entry level, 58%. It had been at 7% just a moment ago. 1 serious punch had increased my mastery by 51%. At this rate, I'd reach perfection in no time. I didn't waste a second. I began practicing the forms right there in the empty lot. Asterisk punch, pivot, strike, asterisk. The sounds of my fists breaking the air echoed through the night. By the 3rd set, a sudden surge of power erupted from my core. My movements felt different, sharper, heavier. When I threw the next punch, the air itself seemed to ripple, creating a small shock wave around my knuckles. A notification chimed in my head. Vajra Fist, great success. I didn't stop. I dove deeper into the rhythm, my strikes becoming fierce and domineering. Then, I threw a punch that looked almost effortless. No flash, no wasted movement. But the moment it extended, the air exploded with a loud crack. Vajra Fist, perfection. I checked my phone. Only 15 minutes had passed. I had taken a D-grade martial art from basic entry to absolute perfection in a quarter of an hour. If anyone found out, their heads would spin. I walked back to the rank 1 tester for one more go. I wound up and unleashed a perfect Vajra fist. Bang! The machine, a heavy piece of equipment weighing several tons, didn't just beep. It flew backward, sliding across the pavement until it slammed into a concrete wall with a violent crash. I froze. Oh crap. I rushed over to pull the machine upright. I didn't have the money to pay for property damage. Hey, who's there? What are you doing in the middle of the night? A voice barked from the darkness. I jumped, spinning around to see a young man rubbing his sleepy eyes as he walked toward me. He looked incredibly annoyed. His name was Chinwei, a rank 1 dancer hired to guard these new testers. Ever since the machines were installed, local martial artists had been crowding the place at 6 a.m., ruining his sleep. He'd finally managed to nod off, only to be woken up by a sound like a bomb going off. Chinwei looked at me, then at the machine. He figured I was just some kid. In his mind, no rank 1 dancer would come to a public park at 2 a.m. The record on that machine was his own, a score of 1208. He assumed I was a thief trying to haul the equipment away. "You kid," he shouted, noticing the machine was now leaning against the wall. "Was that tester there before? Are you trying to steal it? You've got some nerve." "I wasn't stealing it," I said, trying to stay calm while I straightened the heavy frame. "I was just testing my power." "Testing? You expect me to believe you moved a multi-ton machine to the wall just to test it?" Chinwei laughed, but he was actually excited. Catching a thief would be a great boost to his record. He started rolling up his sleeves and cracking his neck. "Just surrender, kid. Don't make me hurt you. That record on the screen? That's mine. You can't beat a rank 1. My patience was wearing thin. "I'm telling you, I didn't move it. I hit it, and it flew back there." "You hit it?" "Yeah, right." Chinwei stepped closer, ready to grab me. But then, his eyes drifted to the display screen that was still glowing. He stopped dead. His pupils dilated. He looked at the number, then at my face, then back at the number. You want to fight me?" I asked, my voice turning cold as he kept approaching. Chinwei felt a sudden chill run down his spine. He shivered, his bravado vanishing instantly. No. No, brother. I was just joking. Pretend I was never here. Keep practicing." But he turned on his heel and sprinted away before I could even blink. I stood there, scratching my head. What was his problem? Was he mentally unstable? I looked down at the screen to see what he saw. 1850. A perfect level Vajra fist was even stronger than I thought. That score was approaching the level of a mid-stage rank 1 dancer. No wonder he ran. I ignored the distraction and started training my other 2 techniques. Meanwhile, back in his guard shack, Chinwei collapsed into a chair, his legs shaking. Holy mother of 1850. That kid would have killed me with one punch. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, peering out the window at me with lingering fear. Who was that monster? What kind of genius trains in a public park at 3 in the morning? By 5 a.m., the air in the training ground was still exploding with sound. My silhouette blurred across the field, my feet kicking off the air itself. With every step, I soared like a cannonball, mastering the sky. My feet hit the ground softly as I landed, the morning light catching my face. I took a deep breath and whispered to the system in my mind. The interface flickered into existence before my eyes. Name, Suhong. Talent, eternal unparalleled. Blood chi, 85. Spirit, 23. Constitution, 3%. Beneath the stats, my skills glowed with a golden light. Vajra fist, perfect. Floating light palm, perfect. Skytread step, perfect. I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of excitement. In a single night, I had pushed 1 Earth-level technique and 2 rank 1 techniques to the perfect realm. I walked over to the rank 1 combat tester and unleashed a barrage of strikes. For a full minute, I didn't stop. The numbers flashed rapidly, settling consistently between 1800 and 1900. I did the math. A rank 1 early-stage dancer usually has 100 blood chi. Mid-stage is 200, and high-stage is 300. My raw combat power was already closing in on a mid-stage dancer, and that was without even factoring in the explosive boost from using active techniques. For someone with only 85 blood chi, this was terrifying. The underground boxing circuit was divided into tiers, trainees against trainees, quasi-dancers against quasi-dancers. As a quasi-dancer, I realized I could absolutely dominate my bracket. The matches happened every night. I decided I'd head there tonight to check it out. But first, I had to go home. I know training requires hard work, but you shouldn't stay out all night, my aunt said gently during breakfast. She looked worried as she pushed a plate toward me. My uncle nodded in agreement, his voice steady. Don't be so impatient. Consistency is key, but you need to rest your body. They acted like everything was normal, hiding the heavy burden of the debt they had discussed the night before. I smiled, taking a bite of a bun. Don't worry, Uncle Andy. I feel great. My younger sister, Su Xiaoming, giggled. Mom, Dad, stop worrying. Brother is as strong as an ox now. He doesn't even look tired. My brother, Su Xiaohai, looked like he wanted to crack a joke too, but he remembered the head flick I gave him yesterday and wisely kept his mouth shut. It was a good choice. When Xiaoming kept teasing me, my aunt reached over and pinched her ear. Is that how you talk to your brother? My aunt scolded. Ow. Help. Brother, save me. Xiaoming cried out, though she was grinning. I just laughed. Seeing them happy made the long night worth it. After breakfast, I walked the two of them to school. Behave yourselves, I told them. Don't go looking for trouble, but if someone bullies you, hit them back hard. We don't start fights, but we don't fear them either. Got it? Xiaoming groaned, dragging out her words. I know. I'm so cute and sweet. Why would I bully anyone? Xiaohai rolled his eyes beside her. He whispered under his breath about how she hit him all the time, but one sharp look from Xiaoming made him go quiet instantly. He turned to me, crossing his arms and trying to look cool. Mom should be worried about the other kids, not me. No one can touch me. As soon as we got further from the house, their playful masks dropped. The worry returned to their eyes. I reached out and rubbed both of their heads. Brother, stop. I won't grow if you do that, Xiaoming protested weakly. Xiaohai looked up at me, his voice trembling slightly. Brother, were you serious yesterday? Do you really have a way to fix the money problem? You aren't just lying to make us feel better? Xiaoming stopped fighting me and looked down. Tell us the truth, Hong. If things are really bad, we'll drop out of school to help work. I stopped walking and grabbed their shoulders, looking them straight in the eye. I am not lying to you. I have a plan. Trust me. Seeing my serious expression, their eyes finally lit up. They knew that when I looked like this, I meant every word. Xiaoming let out a cheer and skipped forward, and Xiaohai finally flashed a real, bright smile. Seeing that joy return to their faces was all the motivation I needed. After dropping them off, I headed to Star City First High School. As soon as I entered the classroom for Class 6, my friend Chen Lin waved me over frantically. Su Hong, did you think about it? Are we going to the underground matches tonight to watch? I'm not going to watch, I said, shaking my head. Chen Lin's eyes widened. Are you serious? You're going to miss a real dancer-level brawl? You'll regret it. I didn't tell him the truth. If I told him I planned to fight, he'd try to stop me or tell my aunt and uncle. I'm not going to watch, I thought to myself. I'm going to win. Quiet down, everyone, our homeroom teacher, Li Ming, shouted as he walked in. Everyone head to the gymnasium immediately. The class was confused. Teacher, what about morning self-study? Li Ming grinned. We can do that, or you can listen to the rank 3 dancer the principal invited to teach everyone a C-rank technique. Your choice. The room exploded. Students scrambled over desks, sprinting toward the gym faster than they ran to the cafeteria at lunch. A C-rank technique taught by a rank 3 professional? This was huge. My heart raced. I wasn't afraid of difficult techniques anymore. I was hungry for them. A C-rank technique. Chun-Lin shouted, shadowboxing as we ran. If I learn this, I'll crush the monthly exams. Heck, I might even be brave enough to step into that underground ring myself. I looked at him, surprised. He blinked, then deflated, punching my arm. Okay, fine, I'm joking. I'm not going. Those guys are brutal, and most of them have mastered their skills to the great success realm. I'd be a dead man. I'll stick to the stance. He leaned in, patting my shoulder like an old man. But you, Hong, I've got high hopes for you. Once you get that Vajra fist to the perfect realm, let me know. You fight, I'll bet everything on you, and we'll split the winnings 50-50. Pretty funny, right? I gave him a thumbs up. Hilarious. Meanwhile, at the school gates, Principal Li Chengshan was waiting anxiously. A black sedan pulled up, and a lean, powerful middle-aged man stepped out. Chen Tian, the principal said, greeting his old comrade. I appreciate you coming all this way. It wasn't easy to arrange this. I took a taxi here myself, and you're complaining about the trouble? Shin Tian snapped, glaring at Principal Li Changshan. I should have stayed at the hotel and waited for you to carry me here in a sedan chair. The two old war buddies traded insults for a second before bursting into laughter, bumping fists. Shin Tian was a rank 3 dancer, even stronger than the principal, and the expert Li Changshan had recruited to teach us today. Come on, the principal said, pulling him toward the gym. My students are already gathered. They're waiting for you. Shin Tian looked speechless. Are you using me like a donkey? I came all this way, and you won't even give me a cup of tea. Tea? I got tea. The principal pulled out 2 plastic bottles. Icy red tea or icy green tea. Take your pick. Shin Tian stared at the cheap convenience store drinks and gave a thumbs up. You're something else, Li Changshan. Real class. He grabbed the red tea, surprised by the size. A 1-liter bottle? Generous. I try, the principal joked. Shin Tian flipped him off and got serious. How's the crop this year? Any good? The principal sighed. Most are still just martial trainees. I've only got about a dozen quasi-dancers. Rank 1 dancers? Only 2, and they just broke through. Shin Tian froze. So, no real talent? Then why did you call me here to teach a C-rank technique? Most of them won't learn a damn thing. He started ranting. Do you think my thunderous fist is some common cabbage you find at the market? It's C-rank. With this student quality, maybe those 2 rank 1 kids will learn something. The quasi-dancers will be lucky to scratch the surface. As for the trainees, they're dreaming. The principal looked annoyed. I'm not asking you to teach the trainees. Focus on the top students. I just brought everyone here because I believe in equal opportunity. Who knows? Maybe a dark horse is hiding among the trainees. You're dreaming out loud now, Shin Tian muttered as they stepped into the gym. The room went silent. Every eye was on them. Students, the principal shouted. Let's welcome rank 3 dancer Shin Tian. Thunderous applause erupted. I clapped along with everyone else. My class was positioned in the middle of the gym, led by our teacher, Li Ming. The elite class was at the very front, right next to the stage. They had plenty of space to move and mimic the movements. The rest of us were packed in like sardines, barely able to breathe, let alone practice. I saw the envy and jealousy in my classmates' eyes as they stared at the elite class. Those kids stood tall, chests out, full of pride. At the front were Li Tu and Qin Shan, the school's only 2 rank 1 dancers. They looked calm, like this was all beneath them. Shin Tian didn't waste time. I'm teaching the C-rank technique, Thunder's Fist. I'll demonstrate it 10 times. How much you learn is up to you. He dropped into a stance. The gym went dead silent. Even the air felt heavy. The elite class students immediately started mimicking his posture. Watch closely, Li Ming whispered to us. This is a rare opportunity. Shin Tian moved. His fists blurred. Thunderous Fist is about raw power and aggression, he explained while striking. When you reach the entry realm, your punch will let out a single crack of thunder. Boom. A sharp sound echoed through the gym. At the proficient realm, you get 3 cracks. At the mastery realm, 5. And at the great success realm, 7, which is where I am. He accelerated. Boom, 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 boom. 7 consecutive thunderclaps shook the room. He pulled back, standing perfectly still. If you ever reach the perfect realm, you'll hit 9 cracks. I haven't reached that yet, so don't get ahead of yourselves. Just try to reach entry today. He glanced at the elite class. Li Tu and Qin Shan were doing okay, but they were just copying the shape of the move, not the spirit. Shin Tian wasn't surprised. 10 seconds to memorize. Then I go again. In the back, Chen Lin leaned toward me. Man, this is impossible. C-rank is insane. And it's so crowded I can't even stretch my legs. I'm gonna forget everything by the time I find space to practice. Right, Hong? He turned to look at me, but I was gone. Hong, where'd you go? He looked around frantically and poked Li Ming. Teacher, Su Hong disappeared. Li Ming frowned, scanning the room. He caught a glimpse of my back as I slipped out the gym's back door. He sighed, shaking his head. He thought I'd given up because it was too hard. He figured the pressure of his family's debt had finally broken my spirit. Let him go, Li Ming muttered. Just focus on your own practice. Outside, behind the gym, I stood in a quiet clearing. I rubbed my chin, thinking, C-rank techniques, they don't seem that hard. I closed my eyes, visualizing Chun Tian's movements perfectly. I stepped forward and threw a punch. Boom. A single thunderclap echoed in the empty air. Thunderous fist, entry realm reached. The notification flashed in my mind, but I didn't stop. I felt the rhythm. I pushed harder. Boom, boom, boom. 3 cracks. Thunderous fist, proficient realm reached. Inside the gym, Li Tu and Qin Shan were still competing, sweating as they tried to outdo each other. They thought they were the only ones who mattered. They had no idea that while they were struggling to copy a master, I was already mastering the storm. I think a few of them should be able to reach the entry realm, Qin Tian said, his voice carrying a hint of exhaustion. Principal Li Qingshan let out a long breath of relief. C-rank techniques were a massive step up from anything these kids had seen. The higher the rank, the steeper the learning curve. Honestly, the principal had prepared himself for the worst-case scenario where no one learned a single thing. Fortunately, Chun Shan and Li Tu didn't let my efforts go to waste, Li Qingshan muttered. He looked at the rest of the elite class. What about the others? Any chance for them? Qin Tian shook his head firmly. Hard. Very hard. The principal nodded slowly. If the elite students were struggling, the regular class students didn't stand a chance. Still, he figured a little pressure would be good for them. There aren't many good seeds in this batch, he sighed, shaking his head. Qin Tian stepped back in front of the students. Last 3 times, he announced. Watch closely. He moved through the thunderous fist forms one last time. As soon as he finished, Li Tu's eyes snapped open. He threw a punch into the air. Boom. A sharp crack of thunder echoed through the gym. Holy crap. Li Tu reached the entry realm, someone shouted. Li Tu grinned, his chest swelling with pride. I did it. He immediately turned to check on his rival, Qin Shan. Right at a moment, another thunderous crack rang out. Qin Shan had reached the entry realm too. I finished first, Li Tu said with a smug smile. I win. Don't get ahead of yourself, Qin Shan replied, his eyes burning with intensity. It was only a few seconds difference. We'll settle this for real during the monthly exams. The two of them stared each other down, acting as if they were the only 2 people in the room. The other elite students felt a crushing sense of inadequacy. Even though they were in the top class, the gap between them and these 2 felt like an ocean. Meanwhile, outside behind the gym, asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. 5 thunderclaps exploded in rapid succession. Thunderous fist, proficient realm reached. I stopped for a second to check my phone. It took me over 10 minutes just to reach this level. I muttered to myself. C-rank techniques really are on another level compared to D rank. I didn't waste another second. I focused, channeling my energy, and dove back into the form. Back inside the gym, Chun Tian finished his 10th demonstration. Principal Li's face shifted from hope to disappointment. Aside from Chun Shan and Li Tu, not a single other student had managed to grasp it. Well, 2 is better than none, Li Qingshan whispered, trying to console himself. It wasn't just the students who felt embarrassed. The teachers from the regular classes were shifting uncomfortably. They hadn't mastered it either. Being outperformed by 2 high school kids was a bitter pill to swallow. Man, what are Qin Shan and Li Tu made of? Chen Lin grumbled nearby. He had already given up and was glancing toward the back door. If I knew it was going to be this boring, I would have left with Su Hong. What a waste of time. My teacher, Li Ming, overheard him. He wanted to say something encouraging, but the reality was too harsh. He stayed silent. Looking around the room, he realized everyone else was just background noise. The gap in talent was undeniable. Maybe Su Hong had the right idea, he thought. Leaving early saved him from this humiliation. Qin Tian wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked over to the principal. Not bad. Those 2 kids learned it. My time wasn't wasted. Why don't you say a few words to the kids? Li Qingshan suggested with a smile. I'll buy you dinner after. I'll take the dinner, but skip the speech, Qin Tian said, waving him off. I need some air. He walked out the back door, just as the principal started a loud pep talk about not losing heart. Qin Tian chuckled to himself as he stepped into the quiet area behind the gym. The path of martial arts is brutal. Qin Tian sighed, looking at the sky. The gap in talent only grows. Without luck or a miracle, hard work just isn't enough to catch up. Suddenly, something caught his eye. A student in a school uniform was practicing in a clearing not far away. It was the Thunderous Fist. Tian was surprised. A regular student had actually come out here to practice immediately? He's hardworking, I'll give him that, Tian thought. But it's useless. Even the geniuses inside needed 7 repetitions while watching him live to get it. Trying to learn it from memory alone was impossible. He turned to leave, but then, boom, 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 boom. 7 thunderclaps roared through the air in a single chain. Tian's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He spun around, staring at me with his mouth hanging open. Before he could even process it, another 7 cracks echoed out. The Great Success Realm? Tian's voice trembled. I just finished teaching it. How can a student reach great success this fast? He couldn't believe it. He watched my every move, his eyes locked onto my back. As he watched, his expression shifted from shock to confusion, and finally, to pure fascination. He was completely mesmerized. Then it happened. Boom! 9 thunderclaps rang out perfectly. A spark of inspiration flashed in Tian's mind. He slapped his thigh in excitement. I get it. That's how it works. He didn't want to lose the feeling. Right there on the spot, he started practicing. 7 cracks, then an 8th. He had reached the level just below perfect mastery. He took a deep breath, standing still as he finished the form. He had been stuck at the great success level for years, and he had just broken through because of what he saw. Old Chun, you improved, Principal Lee shouted, having just walked out. But then his face soured. Wait a minute, you old fox. Were you holding out on me earlier by only showing 7 cracks? What are you talking about? Tian snapped, still dazed. You could do 8 the whole time, but you told me you were capped at 7? I bought you that expensive tea for nothing. You have the nerve to bring that up? Tian roared. I came all this way to teach, and you try to pay me off with a bottle of iced tea? I just broke through right now. Li Chengshan looked awkward. Okay, I'm buying you dinner anyway. But you really shouldn't hide your skills. I wasn't hiding anything. Tian stopped mid-sentence. He looked back at the clearing. It was empty. I was gone. Oh, so you really just broke through? Li Chengshan said, missing the look on his friend's face. Anyway, let's go eat. Tian let out a frustrated, strangled cry. What's wrong with you? The principal asked, baffled. It's you. You idiot. Tian hissed, teeth clenched in rage. You ruined everything. Tian swung a fist directly into Li Chengshan's eye. The principal's socket turned deep purple instantly. Damn it, Tian! Li Chengshan yelled, clutching his face in pain. Was the iced tea joke really that bad? Tian didn't laugh. He looked at his friend with a deadly serious expression. You told me this school didn't have any good talent. Li Chengshan froze, his eye throbbing. Yeah, so? You saw the students. The best we have are Shan and Li Tuesday. Tian let out a cold, sharp laugh. Is a student who can trigger 9 sonic booms with the thunderclap punch considered good talent? Li Chengshan rolled his eyes. Tian, you've lost your mind. If a kid like that existed, calling them talent would be an insult. They'd be a monster, a freak of nature. Then his breath hitched. His eyes widened until they were perfectly round. Wait, what are you saying? You really didn't know? Tian asked, baffled. He quickly explained everything he had just seen in the clearing. By the time he finished, Li Chengshan's legs went weak. He nearly collapsed onto the dirt. He stared up at the sky, mumbling like he had lost his senses. My school has a monster like that? How did I not know? He suddenly bolted upright. You mean the student who was just here? In this clearing? Yes. Tian shouted. Li Chengshan didn't wait. He moved so fast he left a trail of afterimages behind him. He sprinted to the edge of the clearing, looking left and right, until he spotted a boy in a school uniform walking toward the cafeteria. His eyes lit up. Student! Wait, he roared, charging over. The boy turned around, looking completely confused. It was Chun Lin. What's your name? The principal demanded. I'm Chun. Quick, show me the thunderclap punch. Right now. Chun Lin scratched his head, looking lost. Now, Li Chengshan urged. Chun Lin took a stance. He tried to remember the moves Tian had shown earlier and threw a series of shaky, awkward punches. It looked more like he was swatting flies than practicing a high-level technique. When he finished, he looked at the principal with a spark of hope. "How was it, principal? Did I do okay?" Chun-Lin was starting to get excited. Why would the principal pick him out of everyone? Was he a hidden martial arts genius? Had his true power finally been discovered? Li Chengshan stared at him in a long, painful silence. He opened his mouth, closed it, and finally let out a heavy sigh. It was fine. Keep practicing. He turned and walked away without another word. As he walked, he pulled out his phone and barked an order. "All teachers, get to my office immediately." Chun-Lin's heart nearly beat out of his chest. The principal saw his punch and immediately called a staff meeting. It was obvious. He really was a buried genius. His eyes sparkled with pride. Chen Tian walked past him, his lip twitching. He looked at the boy, tempted to say something, but ultimately decided to keep his mouth shut. It felt too cruel to shatter a teenager's delusions. 5 minutes later, every teacher, including Li Ming, was packed into the office. "I want the names of every student who left the stadium early today," Li Qingshan said, his voice low and commanding. The teachers traded nervous glances. Was the principal going to punish them? Li Ming hesitated. He knew I had left early, but he also knew my family situation. He didn't want to get me in trouble. "Principal," Li Ming started cautiously. "If this is about punishment." "Punishment," Li Qingshan laughed. "I'm thrilled. We have a monster in this school. Someone who can hit 9 booms with the thunderclap punch." The room went dead silent. 9 booms. Even the top students barely managed to learn the basics after 10 demonstrations. Li Ming felt a wave of relief. If it wasn't a punishment, then it didn't matter. "Let's start with you," Li Qingshan said, pointing at Li Ming. "Anyone from your class leave early?" "Just one," Li Ming said. "His name is Su Hong." "Su Hong." The principal's eyes sharpened. "Tell me about him. Has he been acting strange? Is he the quiet, reserved type?" "He's very steady," Li Ming said, choosing his words carefully. "As for anything strange, well, he's been stressed about his college entrance fees. He asked for an extension a few days ago. He's been pretty down lately." Li Qingshan's excitement deflated instantly. His lip curled. A kid who can master the thunderclap punch to that level wouldn't be worried about 30,000 yuan. With that strength, he could make that in a single night at the underground fights. "Next." He pointed to another teacher, then looked back at Li Ming. "Oh, and about that kid's fees? Give him the extension." "I've approved it." "Thank you, principal," Li Ming said, bowing slightly. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the cafeteria, staring at my system panel as I ate. Name, Su Hong. Talent, eternal unparalleled. Blood chi, 85. Mental power, 23. Thunderclap punch, perfect mastery. Back in the classroom, Chun-Lin was checking his watch every 5 minutes. Strange. Why haven't they called me yet? He figured the teachers were still busy preparing his special scholarship. He leaned over to my desk. "Hey, Su Hong, you sure you don't want to go to the underground fights tonight? I heard a bunch of people from the genius class, like Chun Shan and Li Tu, are going to watch." "I'm sure," I said. The final bell rang. I grabbed my bag and bolted out of the classroom before he could say another word. 2 hours later, night had fallen. I stood in front of a massive, dark building. The basement level of this place housed the city's most notorious underground boxing circuit. The entrance was swarming with people. I had already changed my clothes and pulled a mask over my face. I walked up to the security guard and told him I was there to compete. He gave me a quick nod and stepped aside. I stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the basement. When the doors slid open, a wave of humid, hot air hit me, carrying the scent of sweat and adrenaline. My night was just beginning. The heavy metal music was deafening. Neon lights flashed in every color imaginable, blurring my vision as dancers laughed and women in revealing clothes wove through the crowd serving drinks. I wasn't used to this kind of environment. I covered my ears, squinting through the haze until I spotted the registration desk. A large board hung nearby, listing the match times and prize money. I scanned the numbers. A standard win earned you 1,000 Blue Star coins. If you were a quasi-dancer, it jumped to 5,000. A rank 1 dancer pulled in 10,000 per win. On top of that, the champion of the apprentice circuit would take home a 30,000 coin bonus. There were about 40 people signed up for the apprentice bracket. If I fought normally, That meant 6 or 7 matches. My eyes stayed glued to that 30,000 bonus. I licked my lips, calculating. It felt like too little. The registration fee alone was 3,000. My family's rent was 8,000 short, and my siblings' tuition would easily add up to another 50 or 60,000. That wasn't even counting my aunt's medical bills. A bit low, isn't it? I muttered. The woman behind the counter laughed. She was an attractive, charming lady with a sharp gaze. I can hear how young you are by your voice, she said, leaning forward. You've got a big mouth for a kid. If you're so confident you'll win, you can try the gauntlet mode. You fight everyone, one by one, until you're the last man standing. I felt a spark of interest. Does the prize change for that? She blinked, surprised. She had only suggested it to shut me up. Yes, if you defeat everyone, the final prize money doubles. But the 1,000 per win rule disappears. It's all or nothing. If you lose even once in the middle, you walk away with 0. Understand? You still want in? I nodded without hesitation. She handed me a contestant badge and pointed to the left. Go get your blood chi tested. I started to walk away but stopped, pointing at a rank 1 dancer who had just finished his test. He was holding the exact same badge as mine. Wait, why is his badge the same as mine? Is there no difference? The woman chuckled. I see what you're thinking. High-level dancers aren't allowed to drop down to the apprentice bracket to bully people. But as an apprentice, if you want to fight quasi-dancers, or even rank 1 dancers because you have a death wish, we won't stop you. I nodded thoughtfully and went to join the line for the testing machine. The woman watched my back, her eyes flickering. She called over an assistant. Go place a bet for me. Bet against this kid. Is he that weak, Sister Wong? The assistant asked. Are you blind? She snapped. His voice is tender, and he clearly doesn't know the rules. He's obviously a student here for the first time. It's free money. Don't you want it? Damn, you're right. I'm betting 3 months' salary on his loss. I stepped up to the machine. The display flashed. 85 blood chi. A staff member walked over. Follow me to the locker room. He saw my confused look and added, many fighters prefer to hide their identity. We provide masks and headgear. That was convenient. I scanned the wall of the locker room until I saw it. A massive bullhead mask. I pulled it on, making sure I could still see. With 2 thick horns sticking out of my head, I walked into the apprentice waiting room. The room was loud. About 50 other apprentices were gathered around a combat power tester. I watched for a while. Most of them were hitting between 1,000 and 1,200. It made sense. These were fighters with less than 90 blood chi, but their actual combat power was far higher than average students. If I only had my old skills, I'd be at the bottom of the pack. But I wasn't that person anymore. The arena doors opened. The other fighters started walking toward the ring, but I didn't wait. I surged forward, leaping over their heads and landing firmly in the center of the ring. I'm choosing gauntlet mode, I shouted. The arena went silent for a heartbeat. Then, the crowd exploded. Holy crap, gauntlet mode right off the bat. Who is this bullhead guy? I've never seen him before. Up in the stands, I saw Chen Lin, Chen Shan, and Li Tu. They looked completely lost. What's gauntlet mode? Chen Lin asked. Someone nearby explained the rules, and their jaws dropped. He's going to fight everyone until the end? That's insane. Li Tu muttered. Chen Lin pumped his fist, then whispered to himself, Su Hong, you idiot. You're missing out. When I tell you about this tomorrow, you're going to regret staying home. The other apprentices in the waiting area weren't cheering. They were furious. Choosing gauntlet mode was a direct insult. It meant I thought I could crush every single one of them. I'll take you down. A middle-aged man lunged onto the stage. You're new here, aren't you? Let me teach you. Before he could finish his sentence, I moved. A single kick connected with his chest. There was a dull thud, and he was sent flying off the platform. Next, I said calmly. The man sat on the floor outside the ring, looking dazed. Everything had happened in a blur. He checked his body and realized he wasn't actually hurt. He scrambled to his feet and looked at me with a nod of respect. In these fights, people often left with broken bones or worse. I had enough control to blast him out of the ring without breaking a single rib. The crowd went quiet for a second, then started buzzing again. This bullhead has some real skill. Chen Lin and the other students were staring with wide eyes. Wait, did he just one kick? The power gap is too big, Li Tu explained, his voice trembling slightly. No matter how strong the others are, this guy is on a different level. Chen Shan curled his lip, looking bored. To him, these apprentice fights were just a sideshow, not even worth a single punch of his thunder fist. But the energy in the room changed instantly. A loud laugh echoed from the waiting area. A middle-aged man wearing a white tiger mask leaped onto the pre-dancer stage. "I'm choosing Gauntlet Mode 2, he roared. The crowd exploded. It's by who? The 7-day champion. People were jumping out of their seats. This was the highlight they had been waiting for. Back on my stage, a notification flashed in my mind. Defeating one apprentice had earned me 3 dance points. I wondered how many points I'd need to actually boost my blood chi, but I didn't have much time to think. 1 win down. 48 apprentices left, the referee shouted into his megaphone, his voice cracking with excitement. Who's next to challenge the bullhead? I stood in the center of the ring and waved my hand, signaling for the next opponent. A burly man jumped up, grinning at me. "Hey friend, thanks for going easy on my brother earlier," he said. "As a reward, I'll try not to hurt you too much." He released his blood chi, and the pressure was heavy. He was at 89 points, just a hair's breadth away from becoming a pre-dancer. He was easily one of the strongest people in this bracket. "Come on then," I said, beckoning him forward. He let out a low growl and lunged. His punch whistled through the air, aimed straight for my chest. I didn't move. I didn't dodge. I just threw my own fist forward to meet his. The man frowned, surprised that I would take him head on. He actually tried to pull back a little, still thinking he needed to be kind to me. But I didn't slow down. My fist accelerated, cutting through the air like a blur. Our knuckles collided. His face went pale as a massive wave of force surged through his arm. He tried to roar and put his full strength into it, but it was too late. I shifted my weight and delivered a lightning-fast kick to his midsection. He flew backward just like his brother had. He landed hard, his butt hitting the exact same spot on the floor. He sat there, dazed and shivering. He had 89 blood chi, yet I had completely overpowered him. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with shock and a hint of gratitude. He knew that if I hadn't controlled my strength, that kick would have shattered his ribs. 2 wins, the referee yelled. After that, it was a blur. One after another, apprentices jumped onto the stage, and one after another, they were sent flying. I didn't even break a sweat. With my Vajra fist at perfect mastery, no one in this rank could even touch me. Suddenly, a massive roar erupted from the neighboring ring. 5 wins for Baihu. I looked over. The man in the white tiger mask stood there, perfectly calm. The crowd was losing their minds. I heard people whispering that Baihu had also mastered an Earth-level technique to the perfect realm. That put him on the same level as me. I was watching him when I heard a sharp whistle of wind behind my head. I didn't think. I just reacted, tilting my head to the side. A fist grazed my mask, slamming into the air where my skull had been a second ago. I turned to see a young man grinning at me. "Fast reflexes," he sneered. He didn't look embarrassed about the sneak attack at all. My blood ran cold. That punch had been aimed at the base of my brain. If it had landed, I could have died. "That's Lin Ping," someone in the crowd shouted. "The dirty coward who won yesterday by crippling his opponents." The referee didn't interfere. In the underground, the fight starts the moment you step on the stage. There are no rules against being a snake. Lin Ping just waved at the booing crowd, soaking in the hate like it was applause. He didn't see me moving. I was a blur of motion, closing the gap before he could even reset his stance. My fist grew large in his vision. He panicked, throwing up his arm to block, but my strength was absolute. There was a sickening crunch. His forearm shattered, the bone snapping and piercing through his skin. He fell to his knees, screaming in agony as he looked at his mangled limb. I didn't stop. I walked toward him slowly, my boots thudding on the mat. "Wait, I surrender," he stammered, his face twisted in pain. He saw the look in my eyes and knew I wasn't going to let him go. He tried to scramble away, dragging his broken arm behind him. I reached down, grabbed his chin, and violently dislocated his jaw with a single twist. His surrender turned into a muffled, wet gurgle. "You like to wave to the crowd?" I whispered. "Keep waving." I didn't hesitate. I delivered a heavy kick straight to his chest. I felt his ribs collapse under my boot. His body went limp instantly, sliding across the floor until he stopped moving forever. I stood back up and walked to the center of the ring. I'm a fair man. If you treat me with respect, I'll return it. But if you try to kill me, I won't give you a second chance. The arena went silent for a heartbeat. The crowd looked at Lin Ping's broken body, then back at me. Then, the silence broke into a deafening roar. He killed him. Serves that snake right. The bullhead is a beast. They were screaming my name, or at least, the name of my mask. I stood there, cold and focused, waiting for the next person brave enough to step into my ring. I had just crushed Lin Ping's throat and shattered his chest. The arena went silent for a heartbeat as they looked at his broken body. Then the crowd erupted. Some people were screaming my name, while others looked like they were going to be sick. In the stands, I saw Chen Lin and the other students from my school. Their faces were pale. A few were actually gagging. This was the reality of a martial artist's life. One moment you're fighting, the next you're a corpse. Chen Lin looked stunned. Even Chen Shan, who had been bragging about his thunder fist all day, was suddenly very quiet. I stood in the center of the ring, feeling the adrenaline surge. My hands were shaking slightly. I wasn't sure if it was fear or the thrill of the kill. I took a deep breath, letting the cold air settle my nerves, and looked down at the crowd. Next, I said, my voice cold. The referee gave me a long, lingering look before announcing my third consecutive win. But seconds passed, and no one stepped up. In the waiting room, the other fighters were paralyzed. They had seen me show mercy in the first 2 rounds, but watching Lin Ping get dragged away like a dead dog changed everything. Is anyone coming? The referee shouted. The fighters whispered among themselves, their faces full of hesitation. They knew I was too strong and too ruthless. One by one, they started shaking their heads and walking toward the exit. They'd rather live to fight tomorrow than die against me tonight. Within minutes, the martial apprentice waiting room was completely empty. The referee was stunned. I had only fought 3 matches in my King of the Hill streak, and the challengers had already quit. This was bad for business. Luckily, on the neighboring stage, a fighter named White Tiger was dominating the amateur warrior rank. He had just secured his 8th win, keeping the crowd's energy alive. The challenger has cleared the stage, the referee announced. Congratulations to the bullhead. I hopped down from the ring and walked toward the back. As I entered the lounge, a woman with a sultry voice called out to me. It was the lady from the registration desk. She held a stack of cash, 60,000 Blue Star coins. I didn't think I'd misjudged someone so badly, she said, smiling. Here is your prize money. You're the one in charge of payouts? I asked. She nodded, waving the money. Isn't it obvious? Keep it for now, I said. I'll collect everything at once later. She blinked, confused. What do you mean? I didn't answer. I walked straight past her and headed toward the door on the opposite side of the hall. She followed me, her eyes widening as she saw where I was going. Above the door, the sign read, Amateur Warrior Waiting Room. Are you serious? She gasped. Earlier, she had joked that if a martial apprentice wasn't afraid to die, they could try to jump ranks. She never expected anyone to actually do it. Most apprentices have a blood chi of around 85. Amateur warriors start at 90. It sounds like a small gap, but at 90, the human body undergoes a massive physical transformation. A warrior with 90 blood chi can usually crush an apprentice with 89 effortlessly. To her, I was committing suicide. I ignored her and stepped inside. The amateur warriors in the room looked at my mask with curiosity. They figured I was just a cocky kid coming to watch the real fights. On the main stage, White Tiger had just sent another opponent flying. White Tiger, 13 wins, the referee roared. The fighters in the room sighed. White Tiger was a monster, a 7-time champion. Most of them were ready to give up and go home. But then, a cold sneer cut through the air. What a bunch of losers. I turned to see a young man with a cocky expression, his arms crossed over his chest. It was Li Ming. He looked at the other warriors with pure disdain. I thought the underground circuit in Star City would have some real talent, Li Ming mocked. I can't believe a weakling like that got 13 wins. The warriors in the room bristled with anger. If you're so tough, why don't you get up there and prove it? One of them snapped. Li Ming chuckled and started walking toward the stage. Watch and learn, you frogs in a well. He leaped onto the ring just as White Tiger was preparing to take his victory lap. White Tiger frowned, surprised that someone was actually challenging him. He offered a respectful salute, but Li Ming didn't return it. Instead, Li Ming lunged forward with a sudden, explosive punch. White Tiger barely managed to block, the force of the blow sending him skidding back across the mat. His eyes went wide with shock. "You actually blocked one?" Li Ming said, unimpressed. "Let's see if you can handle this." He moved like lightning. 3 distinct, booming cracks echoed through the arena, the sound of air breaking. Asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. White Tiger was sent flying backward, coughing up blood as he hit the ground like a discarded rag. He didn't get back up. The entire arena went dead silent. In the stands, Chun Lin and the other students stood up, their eyes bulging. They recognized those sounds. It was the Thunder Fist technique we had just seen that morning. But Li Ming had just produced 3 echoes. He had already reached the mastery rank. Li Tu and Chun Shan exchanged a look, their expressions twisting with a mix of shock and disbelief. As the 2 top geniuses of First High, they had barely managed to reach the entry level of the Thunder Fist technique. Yet, right there on the stage, a young man who wasn't even a rank 1 martial artist yet had already reached mastery. The crowd erupted in applause. People were buzzing, impressed by how easily White Tiger had been taken down. They recognized the C-rank Thunder Fist and were stunned to see such proficiency from a mere trainee. But the young man on stage, Li Ming, didn't look happy. He scanned the room with pure disdain. "Is this really the level of Star City's underground circuit?" Li Ming sneered. "Compared to my home in Yang City, you guys are a joke." The room went cold. Everyone realized at once that this kid wasn't just here to fight. He was here to humiliate the entire city. The referees looked furious, but their positions kept them silent. The audience, however, didn't hold back. Most of them were Star City locals, and they weren't about to let some outsider trash talk their home. Insults started flying, telling him to get lost and go back to begging in Yang City. Li Ming just folded his arms and laughed. "Talk is cheap. If you're so tough, send up another trainee to beat me." Over at the Rank 1 arena, a middle-aged warrior narrowed his eyes. "Kid, don't get too cocky." Li Ming glanced at him and grinned. "You want a piece of this, old man? Even if you're Rank 1, I don't mind." That was the breaking point. If a Rank 1 warrior stepped in to fight a trainee, it would be a disgrace regardless of the outcome. If the Rank 1 warrior won, he was a bully. If he lost, Star City would never live it down. The other trainees in the waiting area looked grim. They knew they couldn't beat White Tiger, so they definitely couldn't beat this monster. "Let me through." A voice came from behind them. The trainees turned around, confused, and saw a guy wearing a Minotaur mask. It was the champion from the lower-tier arena. "Hey, don't get involved," one of them warned. "You're just a martial apprentice. You'll get slaughtered." I didn't listen. I leaped over them and headed straight for the stage. The trainees stared at me like I had lost my mind. Where was I getting this kind of courage? On the stage, Li Ming was about to walk toward the higher-rank arena when he caught me out of the corner of his eye. He raised an eyebrow as I climbed into the ring. The crowd started to cheer, thinking a savior had arrived, but then they saw the mask. The cheering died down instantly. "Wait, isn't that the Minotaur guy?" someone shouted. "He's just an apprentice. What is he doing?" Confusion turned into disbelief. I stood across from Li Ming, who was looking at me with a mocking smirk. I didn't say a word. I just curled my finger, beckoning him to come at me. The arena went wild. People thought I was insane. To them, an apprentice challenging a high-level trainee who had just mastered a C-rank technique was suicide. In the stands, Chen Shan couldn't believe his eyes. He told Li Tu that even a basic punch from Li Ming would break an apprentice's bones. Li Tu nodded, admitting that even they, as new Rank 1 warriors, might struggle against Li Ming. Chen Lin was vibrating with excitement, though he sighed regretfully. "Man, Su Hong, you're really missing out tonight." The referee looked at me with a mix of pity and respect. At least I had the guts to step up when the others were hiding. He decided he would step in the second things got dangerous to save my life. Li Ming's eyes narrowed. He felt insulted that a lowly apprentice thought he was a threat. "You have a death wish," he spat. He lunged forward, throwing a straight punch. He didn't even bother using a technique. He thought a raw physical strike would be enough. I didn't back down. I stepped into his guard and met his fist with my own. Crack. Li Ming's eyes widened. He stumbled back a single step, his arm trembling. I was pushed back 3 steps, but I stayed upright. The entire stadium gasped. People were rubbing their eyes, unable to process how an apprentice had just traded blows with Li Ming and walked away from it. Not bad, I said, steadying myself. To Li Ming, that sounded like the ultimate insult. His face turned purple with rage. He stopped holding back. His blood chi exploded, and 3 thunderous cracks echoed through the air. He was going for the kill with his mastered thunder fist. The referee tensed, ready to jump in. But then he froze. A series of booms erupted from my side of the ring. It wasn't 3 cracks. It wasn't 6. Asterisk boom. 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 Asterisk. 9 echoes. 9 distinct breaks in the air. Li Ming's face went pale. He didn't even have time to scream before my fist connected. The force sent him flying across the ring, spitting blood, until he crumpled into a heap, unconscious. The silence was deafening. The referee stood there like a statue. The audience looked like they had seen a ghost. Then, the realization hit. 9 echoes. Li Tu gasped, his voice shaking. That's the perfect level of thunder fist. And he's just an apprentice? The stadium turned into a madhouse. People were screaming, jumping, and hugging strangers. An apprentice had just one-shot a genius trainee. It was impossible, yet it had happened right in front of them. I looked at the stunned referee and broke the silence. I won. I assume the prize money is mine now. The referee blinked, snapped out of his trance, and nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, absolutely. As long as no other apprentice-rank fighters step up, the prize money is yours, the referee said, his voice echoing through the arena. I turned my gaze toward the waiting room where the other apprentice fighters were gathered. The moment our eyes met, they scrambled backward, shaking their heads frantically. None of them were stupid. I had just displayed a perfect level C-rank technique. Fighting me wasn't a match, it was a suicide mission. I officially declare Su Hong the winner of the apprentice arena, the referee shouted. The crowd went wild, jumping and cheering as I leaped off the stage. I didn't stick around for the applause. I disappeared into the back, heading toward the locker rooms. As I walked through the hallway, the other fighters instinctively parted like the Red Sea. They watched my back in stunned silence. I could hear them whispering about where a monster like me had come from, an apprentice who treated high-level trainees like children. Near the exit, Xiao Fu was waiting for me. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't say a word. I just held out my hand. The prize money, I reminded him. He blinked, snapped out of his daze, and handed me the stack of bills. I counted it carefully. Every cent was there. I turned to leave, but Xiao Fu grabbed my arm. I looked back, annoyed, and saw his eyes shining with a strange intensity. It's late, he said softly. We have rooms here if you need to rest. I frowned and pulled my arm away. I didn't have time for distractions. Women would only slow down my martial arts progress. I went to the changing room, swapped my gear for my regular clothes, and wrapped my face tight before slipping out of the black building and into the night. It was past 9 o'clock. The streets were cold and empty. As I walked, I did the math. Winning the apprentice round got me 60,000 star coins. Winning the trainee round got me another 100,000. 16,000 in a single night. It was a fortune. That was more than my uncle and aunt earned in an entire year. A wave of relief washed over me. I could pay my martial arts exam fees, cover the rent, and handle my siblings' tuition for next year. I might even have enough to start a proper treatment cycle for my aunt's illness. I pulled up my system panel to check my stats. Name, Su Hong. Blood Chi, 85. Mental power, 23. Physique, mortal, 3%. Techniques, Thunder Fist, perfect. Vajra Fist, perfect. Floating Light Palm, perfect. Sky Step, perfect. Martial value, 67. I had defeated 4 people tonight. The system showed that most of my martial value came from that final genius trainee. It seemed the stronger the opponent, the bigger the reward. It was time to grow. I focused on my blood chi and tapped the plus sign. A prompt asked me how much martial value I wanted to spend. I started small, investing 1.5 points. I felt a sudden surge of heat in my veins. My blood chi ticked up to 85.1. My heart raced. Raising blood chi normally took weeks or even months of grueling cultivation. Now, I could do it in a heartbeat. I had 66.5 points left. I realized I could potentially break through to the rank 1 apprentice level right here on the street. I hesitated for a second. Would my body explode if I added too much at once? I decided to test my limits. I added 2 points. Then 5. Then 10. When I dumped 20 points in at once, my muscles felt bloated, and a sharp, stinging pain radiated through my limbs. I stopped and waited for my body to adapt. Once the pain faded, I kept going. When my blood chi hit 90, something snapped. A massive wave of energy exploded from my body. A shock wave rippled outward, sending dead leaves swirling into the air like a localized storm. My breath hitched as the power settled deep into my marrow. I was officially a rank 1 apprentice. I squeezed my fist, feeling the raw, thumping power coursing through me. It was intoxicating. I dumped the rest of my points into blood chi, watching the number climb until it hit 91.7. I had gained nearly 7 points of blood chi in minutes. My phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Song Fei, Raging Thunder Gym. I used to work there as a sparring partner to make extra cash. It paid 100 coins an hour, but it was brutal work. Sparring partner was just a polite way of saying human punching bag. Even with protective gear, I usually went home covered in bruises. I didn't need the money anymore, but I had made a commitment. I wasn't going to break my word. Su-hong? It's almost 10. Where are you? Song Fei asked when I picked up. On my way, I said. I hung up and started walking toward the gym. 10 minutes later, I passed an open-air martial arts plaza. I remembered this place. It had a grade 1 combat power tester. I wanted to see exactly how much stronger I had become. Nearby, in a small guard shack, a young guard was yawning. He was thrilled that the students had left early for once. Finally, some sleep, he muttered, climbing into bed. No way another genius shows up in the middle of the night like yesterday. He was just drifting off when 9 thunderous cracks exploded in the air. Boom, 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 boom. The sound was so loud he jumped out of his skin, slamming his head against the ceiling. He hit the floor, clutching his skull and cursing. Not again, he growled. He threw open the door, ready to scream at whoever was making the noise. But as he ran toward the plaza, he slowed down. A thought hit him. Could it be the same guy from yesterday? No, that was impossible. Geniuses like that didn't just hang out at public plazas 2 nights in a row. He reached the edge of the plaza and stopped. The screen of the combat tester was glowing brightly in the dark. He looked around, searching for the person who had just shattered the silence of the night. The plaza was empty. I had already vanished into the night, leaving the young guard staring at the space where I had just stood. He was fuming, muttering about how some lunatic had the nerve to throw a single punch and run away. He cursed under his breath as he walked toward the combat tester, intending to shut the screen off. He couldn't stand looking at it. Whoever did this, I swear, if I catch you. His voice died in his throat. He let out a scream that rivaled the thunder of my punches. His eyes bulged, staring at the glowing numbers on the display. Combat power, 2023. His jaw dropped so low it looked like he could swallow a light bulb. He spun around, frantically checking the shadows to make sure no one was watching him. When he realized he was alone, he let out a shaky breath and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He felt like a complete idiot. Yesterday, he had almost offended a genius, and today, he had nearly insulted an absolute monster. He slapped himself across the face, the sound echoing through the silent plaza. Then, as he walked back to his shack, he slapped himself again. Over 2,000. I was satisfied. As I walked toward the Raging Thunder Dojo, I felt a new sense of confidence. Song Fei was already waiting for me at the entrance. He waved me over as soon as he saw me. Su-hong, come on, help me practice. I actually hired a martial arts instructor today. You can tag along and learn something. A teacher? I asked, curious. Song Fei grinned. Well, it's specifically for a technique. A C-rank spear art. My eyes lit up. For a martial artist, a weapon was a massive force multiplier, provided they used high-quality alloy equipment. Just like techniques, weapons were ranked from F to SSS. I had never considered buying one before because I was broke, but I knew that if I kept fighting, I'd eventually run into an enemy with an alloy weapon. If I didn't have one of my own, I'd be at a massive disadvantage. We walked into a spacious training hall, over 200 square meters of polished floors and mirrored walls. About a dozen other martial artists were already there. "Song Fei, you're late," one of them shouted. "Did you think we were finished? Is it over already?" Song Fei asked, his eyes wide. "No, but this is the last day for the C-rank spear lessons. You missed the first few days." Song Fei looked like he wanted to punch himself. Man, if I'd started on day one, I might have actually mastered the basics by now. The room went quiet. The other students looked at each other with bitter smiles. They explained that the instructor, a rank 3 martial artist named Jiang Ming, was only here because he owed the dojo master a favor. He didn't care about teaching. He would demonstrate the forms a few times and then leave without giving a single word of advice. They had been practicing for 6 days, and none of them had even reached the entry level. They noticed me standing there and asked who I was. "He's my brother," Song Fei said. "I brought him along to learn. Hope you guys don't mind." "Not at all," they said, welcoming me. The atmosphere in the dojo was surprisingly friendly. They even offered to help me out since they had been at it for a week. Suddenly, the door slammed open. A young man stumbled in, leaning against the wall for support. His clothes were stained with blood, and he looked like he'd been dragged through a meat grinder, but his expression was still arrogant. "My teacher doesn't teach well," he sneered, looking at the group. "Maybe you're all just slow. Stop making excuses for being untalented." The room soured instantly. Song Fei whispered to the guy next to him. "Who is this clown?" "That's Li Ming," the student whispered back. "He's the instructor's disciple. He's always looking down on everyone." "What are you whispering about?" Li Ming barked. "None of your business," someone snapped back. Li Ming gave a disdainful laugh, but another student cut him off. "You talk a big game for someone who looks like a dying dog. Who beat you up like that?" Li Ming's face turned purple with rage. He looked like he wanted to fight, but his injuries were clearly too much for him. He let out a cold snort and limped toward the stairs leading to the second floor. Upstairs, Jiang Ming was standing by the window. He turned as a tall, muscular student named Li Yin walked in. "Li Ming is back," Li Yin reported. Jiang Ming frowned. "I brought you two from Yang City to challenge the geniuses at Star City High School, not to waste time in underground boxing matches. Those arenas are beneath you." He was annoyed. Li Ming was a top-tier student who had mastered the C-rank Thunder Fist to the proficient level. Going to an underground ring should have been an easy win for him. "Li Yin, go get him. I need to give that boy a piece of my mind," Jiang Ming said. But the door opened before Li Yin could leave. Li Ming walked in, looking pathetic. Jiang Ming and Li Yin both stared in shock. "What happened?" Jiang Ming asked, his brow furrowed. "Did you try to fight a rank 1 martial artist?" Li Ming hesitated, looking embarrassed, but eventually, he spilled the whole story. By the time he finished, Li Yin looked like he had seen a ghost. "A student? Thunder Fist? 9 sonic booms." Li Yin gasped. Jiang Ming was silent for a long time. "A genius like that? Why would he be in an underground ring? Are you sure you're not lying?" "I swear, teacher, it's the truth." Jiang Ming was speechless. He had spent 3 months finding a master to teach his disciples the Thunder Fist. Li Ming had reached proficient level, and Li Yin had reached the even higher subtle level. The teacher who taught them had called them both prodigies. But now, a mere student had achieved perfect mastery? It was hard to swallow. Seeing Li Ming's confidence shattered, Jiang Ming sighed and tried to calm him down. "Don't compare yourself to a freak like that. Just focus on healing. Once you're better, you and Li Yin will go to Star City High. You need to prove your strength there. Your path to power starts by crushing their best students." After hearing his teacher's encouragement, Li Ming's confidence flared back to life. He nodded heavily, silently swearing to become stronger so he could find that mysterious fighter and wash away his shame. His path to revenge would start by crushing the students at Star City High. "When do we challenge them?" Li Yin asked, glancing at his injured brother. Jiang Ming thought for a moment. "Li Ming needs time to heal. Let's aim for the end of the month." "The end of the month?" Li Yin hesitated. "I think that's when they have their monthly exams." Li Ming cut him off, his eyes burning with ambition. "Brother, isn't that perfect? If it's exam time, all their geniuses will be there. We'll show up right when they're all watching." Li Yin nodded, liking the plan. "Which school first?" Li Ming gave a confident smile. If we're going to do it, we go for the strongest. We're going straight to Star City First High. Good, Jiang Ming said, pleased to see his disciples' spirits restored. Prepare well for the next few days. No going out. I have one last day of spear technique to teach at the martial arts hall, then I'm done. As Jiang Ming left the room, Li Ming shook his head in disgust. I don't know why he bothers teaching those losers. It's been 6 days, and not a single one of them has even reached the beginner level. Why do you think they pay for classes? Li Yin sneered. They're just leftovers with no talent. Most of them are in their 30s or 40s, barely rank 1. It's a waste of breath. Jiang Ming heard them as he walked away and just smiled to himself. He actually agreed. Learning a C-rank spear technique was nearly impossible for people with such low talent. He was only doing this to settle an old debt. Once today's lesson was over, he was out of there. Inside the training hall, the atmosphere was tense. He's 30 minutes late, one practitioner grumbled. He doesn't even teach seriously, and now he's stalling? Unbelievable. He's a rank 3 dancer, another whispered. If he wants to put on airs, there's nothing we can do. Suddenly, the doors swung open. Jiang Ming walked in carrying a standard-issue long spear. What are you all sitting around for? Get your spears. The students were annoyed by his tone, but they swallowed their pride and scrambled to grab their weapons. I stood at the very back, gripping my spear tightly. Today is the last day I'm teaching the Raging Sea Spear technique, Jiang Ming said coldly. Watch closely. As usual, I'm only performing it 3 times. He didn't wait for a response. He just started. The other students widened their eyes, trying desperately to mimic his movements. My friend Song Fei was flailing his spear around, looking like a tangled mess. I didn't move. I just watched. In my eyes, Jiang Ming's fast movements slowed down to a crawl. I captured every detail, every shift in weight, every flick of the wrist. My mind raced, processing the logic of the technique at lightning speed. By the time he finished the first set, a notification pinged in my head. Raging Sea Spear technique, beginner level. It was slightly harder than the Thunder Fist, but that was all. Jiang Ming didn't give anyone time to breathe. He launched straight into the second repetition, then the third. In just 9 minutes, he was finished. How much you learn is up to you, he muttered, turning his back and walking out without a second glance. The hall erupted in complaints the second he was gone. What the hell was that? If he didn't want to teach, he should have stayed home. 3 times. He didn't even look at us. Song Fei looked at me, completely lost. I didn't catch a single thing. It looked like he was spinning a flaming wheel. How am I supposed to copy that? It was definitely rushed, I agreed, nodding. A normal person couldn't learn from that. Of course, I wasn't a normal person. I glanced at my status panel. Raging Sea Spear technique, subtle level. I had memorized everything. I just needed a little practice to hit the perfect level. One of the older practitioners suggested we spar to share what we'd learned over the past week. He waved Song Fei and me over. Come on, kids. We might not be masters, but we can show you a few tricks. Song Fei agreed instantly. I was going to decline until a thought hit me. Can I get martial points from sparring? Hey, young man, I'll be your partner, the middle-aged man said, gesturing to me. The vibe in the hall was actually pretty friendly despite the bad teacher. Sure, I said, stepping forward. I'll lower my blood chi, the man said kindly. Just watch my movements. He lunged forward with a basic thrust. Clang. His spear flew out of his hands and clattered across the floor. He stood there, frozen, staring at his empty palms. I had moved so fast he hadn't even seen the strike. To him, it felt like Jiang Ming himself had just disarmed him. Sorry, uncle, I said, feeling a bit awkward. Once my technique hit the subtle level, my body just reacted on instinct. Then, the notification rang in my head. Martial points +5. My heart leaped. Sparring actually worked. Have you practiced the spear before? The man asked, picking up his weapon with a look of pure shock. No, I said truthfully. Good grief, are you a genius? He stared at me, his eyes widening as the realization hit him. Wait, did you just reach beginner level after watching him for 9 minutes? The other practitioners crowded around, buzzing with excitement. They had been struggling for 7 days, and here I was, a newcomer, disarming people after 1 lesson. Hey kid, spar with me next. Me too. Let me see that move again. As I became the center of attention, Song Fei just stood there with his mouth open. He looked at me like I was a complete stranger. It was like I had suddenly turned into a different person. I watched the group of practitioners rushing toward me, their eyes wide with disbelief. They couldn't understand how a guy who was supposed to be average had suddenly become a martial arts prodigy. I suppressed a grin. To them, this was a spectacle. To me, it was a goldmine of martial points. One at a time, everyone. One at a time. I called out. I spent the next hour sparring with over a dozen practitioners. The notifications in my head were like music. Martial points +3. Martial points +6. Martial points +5. The points kept rolling in until I circled back to the middle-aged man I'd fought first. This time, nothing happened. No notification. I realized then that I could only harvest points from the same person once per day. Still, I wasn't complaining. In that short window, I had racked up 35 martial points. I noticed something interesting, though. Now that I had broken through to the rank 1 realm, defeating rank 0 practitioners gave me significantly fewer points than before. It made sense. Crushing weaklings wasn't going to make me a master. Holy crap, Su Hong, Song Fei said, picking up his spear and walking over. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Are you some kind of hidden genius? I don't know, I said with a shrug. Maybe I just finally had an epiphany. That's insane, Song Fei said, giving me a massive thumbs up. Then, he looked a bit embarrassed. Hey, do you think you could teach me? I didn't hesitate. Of course. The other practitioners saw me nodding and swarmed us instantly. Hey, handsome, teach us too. Even the kind uncle was looking at me with pleading eyes. I couldn't say no to them. They lined up like disciplined school children, waiting for me to speak. I'll demonstrate it one more time, I told them, gripping the spear. I'll go as slow as I can. Watch my form and try to mimic the flow. I began the raging sea spear technique. Even at half speed, the spear moved like a swimming dragon. When I thrust forward, the air whistled with the sound of crashing waves. It was powerful. It was intimidating. Wait a second, one of the practitioners whispered. This doesn't feel like beginner level. I've seen Jiang Ming's top disciple, Li Yin, practice this. He's at the mastery level, but Su Hong, he looks almost as good as him. Is he actually at the subtle level already? They watched in stunned silence as I moved. With every repetition, my own understanding of the technique skyrocketed. By the time I finished the third demonstration, I checked my system panel. Raging Sea Spear, Mastery. I gripped the shaft of the spear tighter, my heart racing. I had reached mastery in less than an hour. The group crowded around me, firing off questions about specific movements and footwork. I answered every single one. I gave Song Fei the most attention, followed by the kind uncle. I walked through the crowd, physically adjusting their stances and correcting the angles of their thrusts. I felt like a teacher. And honestly, I was better at it than Jiang Ming. I wasn't just showing off. I was actually explaining the why behind the moves. Within 20 minutes, these people learned more than they had in 7 days with that arrogant rank 3 dancer. Suddenly, the middle-aged man thrust his spear forward. A faint sound of a tidal wave echoed through the hall. He froze, then let out a scream of pure joy. I did it. I reached beginner level. I finally got it. That was the spark. One after another, people started hitting the breakthrough. The second person, the third, and then the fourth was Song Fei. He stared at his spear, completely dazed, before pumping his fist in the air. Damn, Su Hong, you're a god. Why aren't you a professional instructor? This is incredible. The others nodded fervently. Jiang Ming had taught 7 classes, and not a single person had reached beginner level. I had been teaching for 20 minutes, and 7 people had already broken through. I stood back and wiped the sweat from my forehead. I had fulfilled my end of the bargain. Song Fei had paid me to be his sparring partner, and even though he wasn't obligated to share this spear technique with me, he had. This was my way of paying him back. Is that it for today? One of the practitioners asked, looking disappointed that I was putting my spear down. As I prepared to leave, the group blocked my path. I was confused for a second, but then the kind uncle stepped forward. Su Hong, thank you for actually teaching us today, he said, handing me a stack of bills. It's not much, just a token of our appreciation. I can't take this, I protested. Take it, another man insisted, forcing money into my hand. Your teaching is worth way more than this. By the time I left the hall, I had 50,000 star credits in my pocket. I watched them waving goodbye in the rearview mirror. He's a true genius, someone muttered as I walked away. Song Fei, you're close with him, right? We'd pay good money if you could get him to come back. Song Fei just shook her head with a bittersweet smile. She was younger than the others, but she was smart. She knew that a talent like mine wouldn't be stuck teaching basics in a local gym for long. Forget it, guys. He mastered a C-rank technique in under an hour. Having him teach us once was a stroke of luck. Don't push it. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was celebratory. It really feels like a dream, someone sighed. He's so much better than Jiangming. Just then, the heavy doors swung open. Li Yan, Jiangming's disciple, walked in with a cold sneer on his face. Talking behind people's backs again, Li Yan barked. My master taught you for 7 days, and none of you learned a thing. You're just talentless hacks. You have no right to complain about his teaching. The room went cold. But this time, the practitioners didn't look down in shame. They looked back at him with pure defiance. Actually, one of them snapped. The teaching was the problem. A kid just taught us for 30 minutes, and we made more progress than we did in a week with your master. It's not even close. One is a real teacher, the other is just a waste of time. The practitioners weren't holding back anymore. Their frustration with Jiang Ming had been building for days, and now it was boiling over. Li Yan's eyes flared with rage. She was about to snap back when Jiang Ming himself walked over, looking annoyed. What's going on? He asked. Teacher, Li Yan hissed, pointing at the crowd. They're saying that some kid's 30-minute lesson was better than your entire week of teaching. Jiang Ming's brow furrowed. He knew he hadn't been giving them his best effort, but this was a local gym. He was a professional. He didn't believe for a second that anyone here understood spear techniques better than him. The gym owner was a rank 3, sure, but he was a saber user, not a spearman. Nonsense, Jiang Ming said, his voice cold. You claim someone taught you better? Where is he? I'd love to see this supposed master. He let out a mocking laugh. Or did you just make him up? Song Fei stepped forward, her expression tight. He's my friend. He finished the lesson and left already. Jiang Ming's smirk grew wider. Your friend? He glanced at her with pure disdain. I'll admit I wasn't being very serious with you all, but don't tell me a friend of a mere pre-martial artist is in my league. That was the final straw. Every practitioner Su Hong had just coached felt the insult personally. Song Fei didn't argue. She simply walked over, picked up a standard long spear from the rack, and looked Jiang Ming dead in the eye. Watch closely, she said. She lunged. The spear blurred. Suddenly, the air in the hall vibrated with a low, rhythmic sound, the unmistakable roar of a crashing tide. She performed the raging sea spear technique with fluid precision. Li Yan's pupils shrunk. She actually learned it. Jiang Ming froze. He looked stunned for a second, but he quickly recovered, shaking his head. I don't remember seeing you in class this week. This must be your first time watching me. If you learned it after seeing my 3 demonstrations, it just means you have high natural talent. The other practitioners groaned at his sheer arrogance. You have some nerve, one man shouted. Your 3 demonstrations took 9 minutes, and you walked out. You think she's the only one? What about us? We've been here all week. Jiang Ming sneered at them. You lot just have poor comprehension. You can't handle high-level techniques. Is that so? The man challenged. Then open your eyes and look at our poor comprehension now. One by one, the practitioners grabbed spears. 6 of them stepped onto the floor and began the form. The room filled with the sound of howling waves. 6 more people, all hitting the entry level of the technique at the exact same time. Jiang Ming and Li Yan stood frozen. Including Song Fei, that was 7 people. We followed you for 7 days and learned nothing, someone spat. This kid taught us for less than 30 minutes, and we all broke through. What do you have to say now? Jiang Ming's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Song Fei wasn't finished. And since you look down on my friend so much, let me tell you something. He is a pre-martial artist. He's a high school student. He had never even touched a spear before tonight. After watching your lazy demonstration, he didn't just learn it. Ta reached the micro-mastery level instantly. Then he spent 30 minutes making sure we reached entry level. Jiang Ming's face went pale. Impossible. That's absolutely impossible. Song Fei didn't bother arguing. She performed the form again, the sound of the sea echoing off the walls. The evidence was undeniable. Jiang Ming fell into a stunned, humiliated silence. Seeing he had nothing left to say, Song Fei and the others turned their backs on him and walked out of the training hall. Jiang Ming stood in the empty room for a long time, staring at the floor. A student never touched a spear. Micro-mastery in one night. He whispered, "What kind of monster is he?" Lian was just as shaken. She had been praised as a genius for reaching entry level in 2 days. Hearing that someone did better in an hour felt like a dream. "Teacher," Lian said quietly, "they might be exaggerating." Song Fei said he's a student. "If he's really that good, we'll see him when we go to challenge the top students at Star City First High after Li Ming recovers." Jiang Ming patted her shoulder, trying to regain his composure. "You're right. Half an hour to reach micro-mastery? Even the geniuses in the capital aren't that fast. He probably practiced in secret for years. Don't worry about it. With your great success mastery and your blood chi, very few students in this city can touch you." Meanwhile, I was walking home under the dim yellow glow of the streetlights. I checked my bag. I had just made another 50,000. Added to my previous savings, I had 210,000 star credits. It felt surreal. A few days ago, I was worried about rent and entrance fees. Now, I had it all in one night. In this world, strength really is everything. I looked at the bulging backpack and thought about the front lines. The monsters from the cracks were always a threat. If they ever broke through, we'd be slaughtered. I needed to be stronger. I never wanted to feel helpless again. I pulled up my system panel as I walked. Name, Su Hong. Blood Chi, 91.7. Mental Power, 23. Techniques, Raging Sea Spear, Great Success. Vajra Fist, Perfect. Flash Palm, Perfect. Air Step, Perfect. Dao Points, 35.5. I noticed the spear technique was only a great success. I had spent too much time teaching the others instead of perfecting it for myself. Plus, I didn't even own a spear. I'd need to buy an alloy weapon soon if I wanted to use it in a real fight. I liked the spear, it felt right. Now, I needed to focus on the most important thing, my blood chi. Without a guidance technique, my progress was too slow. In the pre-martial stage, you can only rely on physical exercise. It can take weeks just to gain a single point. But once you hit rank 1, everything changes. You can use guidance techniques to absorb the spiritual energy of the world. I couldn't do that yet. Spiritual energy is violent. If your body isn't strong enough to contain it, you'll literally explode. Hundreds of years of history and thousands of deaths had proven that 100 blood chi was the minimum safety threshold. I needed to hit 100. Fast. I didn't hesitate. I dumped all 35.5 Dao points directly into my blood chi. Immediately, a warm sensation flooded my limbs. I could feel the energy surging through my veins, pushing my body toward the limit. The heat surged through my veins like a rushing river. It lasted for several minutes before finally subsiding into a dull hum. I looked down at my system panel. Name, Su Hong. Blood Chi, 95.2. I was only 4.8 points away from becoming a rank 1 martial artist. I was so close. But my Dao points were back to 0. I needed a new way to farm them, and fast. Then it hit me. The school organized monthly exams to rank the strongest students. The top 10 always received massive rewards from the school. The next exam was in 6 days. I had to participate, but I couldn't just sit around until then. I needed money for an alloy spear. As I walked past a small convenience store, the sound of a news broadcast caught my ear. The anchor was talking about Star City's outskirts. Apparently, the monster activity was increasing, and the city lord was calling for martial artists to hunt them down. The rewards were huge. My eyes lit up. Killing monsters would give me Dao points and the cash I needed for my weapon. Plus, I remembered the moment I killed Lin Ping in the underground ring. It was my first time taking a life, and it had left me feeling unsettled, both physically and mentally. I needed to get used to the sight of blood. I needed to harden myself. I made my decision. I would head into the wilderness tomorrow. Since the college entrance exams were close, the school allowed seniors to decide their own schedules. As long as I showed up for the monthly exam, I wouldn't get in trouble. I made my way back to our dilapidated apartment complex. The streetlights flickered, casting long, shaky shadows across the pavement. In front of me, I saw my uncle, Su Guoming, trudging toward the building. His back was hunched, and he held his waist with a grimace of pain. He had strained his back yesterday, but had forced himself to move heavy crates all day anyway. He stopped at the foot of the stairs and let out a long, heavy sigh. "Damned boss," he muttered under his breath, his voice thick with exhaustion. "I've worked for you half my life, and you won't even let me advance a month's salary." He stood there for a moment, looking small and defeated. Then, he rubbed his face, forced a smile onto his weary features, and began the slow climb. It took him 10 minutes just to reach the 5th floor. When I entered the apartment a few minutes later, I saw my younger siblings, Su Xiaohai and Su Xiaoming, in the cramped living room. They were drenched in sweat, their little faces serious as they practiced their horse stance. "Dad, you're back," they cheered. My uncle nodded, his smile tight. My aunt, Chunlan, came out of the kitchen wearing an apron. She saw him clutching his waist and immediately rushed to help him sit down. "No luck," my uncle whispered to her. They had planned to ask for a salary advance last night, but clearly it hadn't worked. My aunt looked devastated, but she forced a smile and told him they'd find another way. She turned to grab some medicinal ointment, but my uncle stopped her. He shook his head, signaling for her to hide his injury. He didn't want the kids to worry. I stepped into the room with a wide grin. "I'm home. Brother," the kids shouted. My uncle and aunt masked their anxiety. "Xiaohong, why are you so happy?" my uncle joked. "I haven't seen you look like this in a long time. Don't tell me you broke through and became a quasi-martial artist?" He was only teasing. He knew how hard it was to raise blood qi. I blinked, feigning shock. "Uncle, how did you know?" The room went silent. My uncle and aunt froze. Xiaohai and Xiaoming were so startled they lost their balance and tumbled onto their butts with a loud thud. "Brother, you're joking, right?" Xiaohai asked, rubbing his backside. I looked them all in the eye and nodded seriously. "It's true. I'm a quasi-martial artist now." "Whoa!" The two kids lunged at me, wrapping their arms around my waist with pure adoration in their eyes. My uncle and aunt laughed, their joy genuine, but I could see the weight returning to my uncle's shoulders. He had talked to some coworkers earlier today. The registration fee for the martial arts exam was 30,000 coins, and it had to be paid within a week. He felt like a failure for not having the money ready. He told himself he'd go back and beg his boss again tomorrow. He'd get that money somehow. "Everyone, come here," I said, pulling them toward the dining table. "I have a surprise." "Another one?" my uncle asked, trying to keep the mood light. "A big one," I laughed. I swung my backpack onto the table and unzipped it. I turned it upside down. Thick stacks of blue bills came tumbling out, piling up until they nearly covered the entire table. There were 210,000 coins in total. The silence that followed was deafening. None of them had ever seen this much cash in their entire lives. "Xiaohong, where did this come from?" My uncle's voice trembled. He looked terrified that I had done something illegal. "Don't worry, uncle," I said, telling a white lie. Once I broke through, the principal saw my potential. "This is a special scholarship." A massive wave of relief washed over them. My aunt's eyes welled with tears. "Uncle, aunt, you've worked hard all these years," I said, my voice firm with pride. "From now on, I'll carry this family." Winning the underground championship and having rank 1 martial artist praise me at the gym felt good, but it was nothing compared to this. Good boy," my uncle choked out, his voice cracking as he tried to hold back his emotions. "You've surpassed me, Xiaohong. Aunt, you can focus on your treatment now," I told her. "I'll earn the rest." She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Xiaohai and Xiaoming looked at me like I was a god. That night, no one slept. My uncle and aunt stayed up talking, their voices filled with hope for the first time in years. As for me, I looked out the window at the dark city, ready for the wilderness that awaited me tomorrow. Xiaohai and Xiaoming clung to my arms, eyes wide with excitement, asking a million questions at once. I showed them a few simple moves, just a flicker of speed and a light strike in the air. The two little ones cheered and clapped until their hands were red. The next morning at breakfast, the mood was heavy. My uncle and aunt pushed the stack of cash back toward me. They told me I was at a critical stage in my training and couldn't afford any distractions. They wanted me to keep every cent for supplements and gear. We went back and forth until my throat was sore. Finally, I forced them to keep most of it, only stuffing 50,000 coins into my own bag. When they tried to argue again, I didn't give them the chance. I bolted out the door. I'll be staying at school to cultivate for a few days. I shouted over my shoulder. Don't wait up. I walked down the street and let out a long breath. The money still wasn't enough. I realized that if I had brought home 2 million instead of 200,000, they probably wouldn't have been so hesitant to spend it. I needed to hunt. I needed to get paid. I hailed a taxi and headed for the outskirts of the city. About 10 kilometers away sat the martial artist base. It was a fortress built specifically to service those who ventured into the wilderness to hunt beasts. Ever since the news of the beast tide threats broke yesterday, the place was crawling with people looking to cash in on the bounties. The entrance was a sea of vehicles and people. Martial artists were everywhere, some standing alone with cold expressions, others forming tactical squads. I stepped out of the taxi and looked at the massive crowd waiting in line. It was a zoo. It took me half an hour just to get through the gates. The base was impressive, with reinforced glass walls that gave a clear view of the wasteland outside. Most of the hunters were gathered around a massive digital screen. Near the exit to the wild, I saw warriors returning, covered in dried blood and grime. They carried heavy bags that dripped crimson onto the floor. I watched as they reached the settlement counter. They didn't bring back whole carcasses, they just dumped out piles of severed left ears. The staff counted them quickly. 10 rank 1, early stage. I heard one clerk mutter. I looked up at the bounty screen to check the rates. A non-ranked beast was worth 300 blue star coins. A rank 1 early stage was 1,000. Mid-stage jumped to 3,000, and high stage was 5,000. The rules were simple: no left ear, no pay. With my current strength, rank 1 early stage beasts would be easy prey. 10 of them would net me 10,000 coins, not counting the pelts or materials I could sell separately. The problem was space. Most hunters left the meat and fur behind because it was too heavy to carry. I rubbed my chin, thinking of a plan, and headed for the wilderness exit. The line was moving slowly. I started worrying that the nearby beasts had already been wiped out by the sheer number of hunters. Suddenly, a rough voice boomed from behind. Get out of the way. I turned to see a squad of 5 rank 1 martial artists. They were led by a cocky young man with his chin held high. They didn't even glance at the line. They just shoved their way to the front. There were stronger teams waiting, even some rank 2 fighters, but to my surprise, everyone stepped aside without a word. The arrogant guy let out a short, mocking laugh and disappeared through the gates. As soon as he was gone, the whispers started. Damned brat, someone hissed. Thinks he's king just because his uncle is Yi Chi. If it wasn't for the base manager, I would have slapped that look off his face, another grumbled. I listened for a minute and pieced it together. The kid was Yi Feng, a mid-stage rank 1 fighter. His uncle, Yi Chi, was a rank 3 powerhouse and the head of this entire base. Nepotism was the same in every world, it seemed. I didn't care, though. I wasn't here for drama. I was here for blood. When it was finally my turn, the guard looked at my face and paused. You're pretty young to be heading out alone, he noted. He didn't stop me, though. He just waved me through. I walked through a long, reinforced tunnel and stepped onto the raw earth of the wilderness. The air here was different, sweet, wild, and dangerous. I took a deep breath, picked a direction, and started walking. The forest was dense, filled with ancient trees that blocked out the sun. I kept my hand near my waist, eyes scanning the brush. Suddenly, the grass ahead rustled. I dropped into a low crouch, muscles tensed. A figure popped out, another hunter. I sighed. I had been walking for a while and hadn't seen a single beast, just other humans. The perimeter was picked clean. I needed to go deeper. I stood up and tested my strength. I took a running start and leaped. I kicked off the air itself, the pressure creating a muffled sonic boom. I felt like a blur, soaring dozens of meters in a single bound. I hit a tree trunk, kicked off again, and vanished into the thickest part of the woods. 10 minutes later, I found my first target. It was 2 meters long with tusks shaped like crescent moons. A shadow moon wolf. Rank 1, early stage. I remembered the description from my textbooks at school. The wolf's mouth dripped with saliva, its glowing green eyes locked onto mine. It seemed to be sensing my blood chi. After a moment, a look of predatory joy crossed its face. To this beast, I looked like the weakest human it had encountered all day. It let out a guttural howl and lunged. Its jaws aimed straight for my throat. My breath hitched. My body tightened instinctively. That familiar rush of life or death adrenaline flooded my system, making my hands tremble with excitement. My mind felt incredibly sharp. As the wolf flew through the air, I didn't panic. I ducked low, sliding right under its belly. I bared my teeth and threw a punch. 9 thunderous cracks echoed through the clearing. My fist tore through the wolf's underside, leaving a massive, jagged hole that went straight through its back. The beast hit the ground with a heavy thud. It didn't even twitch. It was dead before it landed. I exhaled, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then, the smell hit me. The wolf's saliva was foul, a rotting, metallic stench that made my stomach turn. I held my breath, grabbed the left ear, and ripped it off. I tossed it into my backpack and kept moving. As I walked, I replayed the move in my head. That duck and strike. I hadn't even thought about it. It was like my body reacted on its own, faster and more fluidly than ever before. It wasn't just my comprehension that had been boosted by my talent. My combat instincts were becoming something terrifying. My combat instincts were fully maxed out. I stood there, staring at the dead wolf, and realized this was the first time I had felt the true difference. Back in the underground boxing matches, I had simply crushed my opponents with raw power. I was so much stronger than them that I never noticed how sharp my reactions had actually become. I needed to test this properly. I needed another beast. I pushed deeper into the forest. This area was crawling with monsters. It didn't take long before a massive shadow loomed between the trees. It was a black bear, easily the size of a small shed. An intermediate rank 1 beast, a frenzied black bear. Come on then, I said, beckoning with my finger. The bear lived up to its name. Seeing my provocation, it let out a deafening roar and charged. The ground trembled under its weight as that mountain of fur and muscle barreled toward me. It swung a massive paw, aiming to crush my skull. I stepped aside effortlessly. The bear attacked again and again, its claws whistling through the air, but it couldn't even touch a thread of my clothes. 10 minutes passed, and the bear was huffing and puffing, its tongue hanging out from exhaustion. I stood a few feet away, my breathing steady and my uniform barely wrinkled. It was true, my talent for combat awareness was off the charts. An intermediate rank 1 beast couldn't even graze me. This eternal peerless talent was terrifying. Test over. It was time to end this. The bear roared one last time, trying to raise its paw for another strike. Before it could move, I stepped in. Boom! A wave of agonizing pain hit the bear's forepaw. It let out a pathetic whimper and looked down, confused. Its paw was gone, pulverized. It looked up just in time to see my fist expanding in its vision. Crack! I punched straight through its skull. I jumped back instantly, avoiding the spray of brain matter as the massive carcass slammed into the dirt, shaking the earth one last time. I walked over, sliced off the left ear, and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air behind me. My body reacted before my brain did. I lunged to the side. A split second later, a long spear slammed into the exact spot where I had been standing. Oh, fast reflexes, a voice said, sounding surprised. I looked up. A scrawny man was slowly pulling his spear out of the ground. He gave me a predatory grin. Kid, hand over all the beast ears you've collected, and I might let you live. I stared at him, expressionless. Instead of hunting beasts, you're hunting me? Young people are so brainless, the man sneered. Why hunt monsters when robbing people is so much faster? He pointed the tip of his spear at my throat. Ears or your life. I'll give you 3 seconds to decide. I started to speak, but my eyes caught the glint of his weapon. I stopped. I actually smiled. Is that an alloy spear? The man blinked, caught off guard. Duh. Obviously. What grade is the alloy? Is it D rank? Wait, why the hell am I answering you? He realized I was stalling and turned red with rage. You had your chance. Dot. He lunged, thrusting the spear with lethal intent. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at the weapon with a hint of regret. Only D rank. Well, I guess it'll do for now. The man laughed, certain he was about to pierce my throat. But just as the tip reached me, his vision blurred. His hands went numb. He felt a sudden, violent force against his chest. His fingers flew open, releasing the spear, and he was sent flying backward. He hit an ancient tree with a sickening thud and slumped to the ground, coughing up a mouthful of thick, dark blood. He looked dazed, like he had no idea what had just happened. "Not bad," I said, weighing the weapon in my hand. The balance and hardness of an alloy weapon really are on another level compared to those cheap school spears. The man looked up and saw me standing there, casually inspecting his weapon. He swallowed hard. It finally clicked. He had picked a fight with a monster. "Listen, kid," he rasped, forcing a pathetic smile. "I lost. The spear is yours. Consider it a gift. Can I go now?" "A gift? That's very kind of you," I replied. "Sure, you can go." The man scrambled to his feet, his heart full of malice. "Stupid kid," he thought. Wait until I get back and bring my crew. I'll kill you for taking my spear. He turned to run. Suddenly, a sound like a crashing tidal wave erupted behind him. He started to turn his head, but he didn't see a thing. The spear whirled through the air, the shaft slamming into his chest with enough force to collapse his ribs. He was sent tumbling across the clearing. You said I could go," he gasped, staring at me in disbelief as I walked toward him. I gave him a bright, hollow smile. I lied. His eyes widened with hatred. He tried to scream, but the spear tip drove straight through his heart. His head hit the dirt, and the light faded from his eyes. I stood over him and realized something had changed within me. There was no shaking, no nausea, no guilt. The first time I killed, I felt a physical reaction. Now, nothing. I opened his backpack. My eyebrows shot up. There were at least 20 beast ears inside. The man was right about one thing. Robbing people was definitely more profitable. I tucked the loot away, though I knew I wouldn't make a habit of this. I wouldn't kill someone without a reason, but I wasn't going to let a golden opportunity pass me by. I started to walk away, then slapped my forehead. Right, almost forgot to loot the body. I turned back and searched his pockets, but found nothing else. I'd have to remember to do that first next time. I was still a bit of an amateur at this. As I walked, I opened my system panel. My martial value sat at 38 points. Without a second thought, I dumped all of it into my blood chi. A familiar surge of heat raced through my veins. My blood chi jumped from 95.2 to 99. I was 1 point away from becoming a rank 1 martial artist. I looked at the D-rank alloy spear in my hand. I was actually grateful the guy tried to kill me. With this weapon, I could finally push my great success, Raging Sea Spear, technique to the perfect realm. I just needed one more beast to test it out. That night, I found a secluded cave and rolled a massive boulder in front of the entrance for safety. I sat by a small campfire and pulled up the panel again. My martial value had reached 32 after an afternoon of hunting. It was time. I funneled the points into my blood chi. When the number hit 102.2, my entire body convulsed. My blood surged like a literal tide, roaring through my arteries. My skin turned scorching hot, and my limbs felt like they were being forged in a furnace. Rip! My muscles expanded so violently that my sleeves tore open, revealing arms corded with thick, bulging veins. After a few minutes, the intensity faded, and my physique settled back into its lean, refined shape. I clenched my fist, feeling a power that dwarfed anything I had felt before. I was a rank 1 martial artist. This was what it meant to be truly strong. No matter how many times I experienced that surge of power, it never failed to mesmerize me. I took a moment to savor the feeling, letting the newfound strength settle into my bones. Over the next 4 days, the forest became my hunting ground. I spent every waking hour tracking and killing beasts, pushing my limits until my Raging Sea Spear technique finally reached the perfect realm. Now, every time I thrust the spear, the air whistled with the sound of a crashing tsunami. It wasn't just for show, the power was devastating. I could shatter the spine of a mid-tier rank 1 beast with just a few strikes. By the end of the 4th day, I was a different person. The naive student who had entered the forest was gone. My eyes were cold, my movements sharp, and I carried the heavy, predatory aura of a veteran hunter. I stood in a clearing, my eyes locked on a massive black serpent. It was over 10 meters long, its dark scales shimmering like polished jade. This was a black jade python, a creature at the very top of the food chain for rank 1 beasts. It was the most dangerous thing I had encountered so far. The python flicked its tongue, then suddenly lashed out with its massive tail. It moved with terrifying speed, shattering a boulder in its path as it whipped toward me. I didn't dare take the hit head-on. Only a fool would try to tank that. I leaped into the air, the ground beneath me exploding from the impact of the tail. Hovering for a split second, I lunged forward. My spear struck like a bolt of lightning, driving straight into the python's left eye. The alloy tip sank deep into its skull. The serpent shrieked, a fountain of thick blood spraying into the air. Driven mad by the pain, it swung its tail wildly at me. I grinned, yanked my spear free, and used the momentum to vault backward. There was a sickening thud as the python's own tail slammed into its own head, sending it crashing into the dirt. I didn't give it a chance to recover. Using my skystep technique, I blurred through the air and drove my spear into its other eye. I retreated immediately, standing back to watch the blinded beast thrash uselessly at the empty air. Whenever it slowed down, I'd dart in, deliver a stinging strike, and pull back. I wore it down for 15 minutes until it didn't even have the strength to lift its tail. Only then did I step forward and end its life. My heart was hammering against my ribs. It might have looked easy, but one mistake would have meant a broken body. Still, with my peerless talent, buff, and 4 days of nonstop combat, my instincts had reached an incredible level. I looked at the mountain of a carcass and realized I had a problem. Pythons don't have ears, which is what I needed for proof of my kills. I searched the body until I spotted a single, brilliant scale on its forehead. I tried to pierce it with my alloy spear, but the tip couldn't even leave a scratch. This was high-grade material, perfect for armor and worth a fortune. I pried it off, then took a regular scale as my official trophy. I shouldered my backpack, which was bulging with the ears of dozens of beasts I'd slain over the last few days. It was time to head back and cash in. On my way out of the forest, I passed several teams of martial artists. They looked at my overflowing bag with greed, but one look at my blood-stained clothes and my freezing stare made them reconsider. They knew a killer when they saw one. However, a group of 5 blocked my path. I recognized the leader immediately, a young man named Yifeng. I didn't want any trouble, so I turned to take a different route. "Stop right there," Yifeng barked. I didn't stop. I kept walking. "Young master, he's just a kid. Let me handle him," a middle-aged man said, stepping forward to suck up to Yifeng. This guy had spent the last few days following Yifeng around, robbing weaker teams who were too intimidated by Yifeng's family status to fight back. He was eager to show off. Yifeng nodded. "Fine. Go ahead. Don't kill him, just cripple him." The man lunged at me, closing the gap in seconds. He swung a heavy fist at my back. I didn't even have to think. I spun on my heel, my spear blurring in a silver arc. The sound of metal tearing through flesh was sickeningly clean. My spear point burst through the man's back, having pierced his heart from the front. He looked down at the spear in shock. He tried to speak, but blood filled his throat, leaving him only able to make a gurgling, wet sound. I yanked the spear out, and he crumpled to the ground like a sack of flour. I stared at his body for a second, then noticed his backpack was also full of beast ears. Without a word, I grabbed his bag and vanished into the dense trees. It happened so fast that Yifeng and the other 3 stood frozen. In the blink of an eye, their companion, a mid-tier rank 1 martial artist, was dead. You dare kill my man?" Yifeng finally screamed, his face contorting with rage. "And you stole the bag. You're dead." He turned to the remaining 3 hunters. "Follow me. Kill him." The 3 men hesitated. Their strength was about the same as the man I'd just killed. They realized that I wasn't just some lucky kid. I was a genius from the high school. Killing a student like that could bring the wrath of the city down on them. "Young Master Yi," one of them whispered. "He's probably a top student. If we kill him and the school finds out." Yifeng glared at him, his eyes bloodshot. "So what if he's a genius? This is the wilderness. We kill him, dump him in a beast's mouth, and no one will ever know. Now move." The 3 hunters scrambled to follow me, but they didn't stand a chance. Even with their combined speed, they couldn't close the gap. I moved through the brush like a shadow, watching them fall further and further behind. Yifeng was livid. He stood there, teeth clenched, screaming at my retreating back. Kid, I've memorized your face. Drop that bag right now if you know what's good for you. I didn't stop. Then his voice dropped into something darker, dripping with murderous intent. Otherwise, I'll kill your entire family. I froze. My feet skidded to a halt, and I slowly turned my head. A cold, violent rage flared in my chest. First, this coward sent his men to rob me. Then, after I defended myself, he dared to threaten my siblings? He was looking for death. I didn't say a word. I just memorized his position, turned back around, and accelerated. I vanished into the deep forest, leaving them eating my dust. Damn it, he's gone. Yifeng roared, cursing at the empty trees. The 3 remaining hunters stood there like wooden chickens, terrified to even breathe. Once he finished his tantrum, Yifeng turned back toward the edge of the forest. Follow me. He's got the bag, so he has to go back to the base to settle his points. We'll just camp the entrance and ambush him there. One of the hunters looked up at the darkening sky. He looked nervous. Young Master Yi, it's already night. The high-level beasts are going to be everywhere. Maybe we should wait until morning? Yifeng frowned and shook his head. No, if that brat travels through the night, we'll lose him for good. Move. They started trekking through the dark, heading for the exit. Yifeng spent the whole walk cursing my name, while the 3 hunters grumbled under their breaths. They were used to a comfortable life of robbing others under Yifeng's protection. Now, because of me, they were forced to hike through a monster-infested forest at midnight. If I see him again, I'm killing him first, one hunter muttered. Don't any of you try to steal the kill. It's that dead guy's fault, another added. If he hadn't been so careless, we wouldn't be in this mess. They were so busy complaining that they didn't notice the silence of the woods. Suddenly, a figure burst from the thicket. A spear flashed like a bolt of lightning, driving straight through the heart of one of the hunters. Before the others could even gasp, I yanked the spear back and vanished into the darkness again. It was too fast. It was a perfect ambush. They stood there in shock until their companion's body hit the ground with a heavy thud. Damn it, it's him again, Yifeng screamed, his voice shaking with a mix of shock and fury. He never imagined I hadn't actually run away. I had been stalking them from the shadows the entire time. Looking at their friend's fresh corpse, Yifeng and the 2 remaining hunters felt a chill run down their spines. Every hair on their bodies stood up. Fast. Move faster. Get us out of this hellhole. Yifeng hissed, swallowing hard. The hunters didn't argue this time. They kept their mouths shut and moved as fast as they could, eyes darting frantically at every rustle in the leaves. Boom. A loud explosion of sound erupted from the brush. The 3 of them jumped, spinning around with their weapons raised. They stared into the dark for 10-15 seconds. Nothing happened. I was playing with them, and they knew it. I'm going to tear him apart when I catch him, Yifeng hissed through gritted teeth. Bastard only knows how to sneak around. If you've got guts, come out and fight like a man. Yeah, one of the hunters whispered, his voice trembling. Right, brother? He didn't get an answer. Yifeng and the hunter froze. A sickeningly familiar sound followed. Thump. They turned around. Their hearts nearly stopped. Another one was down. Another body, another clean kill. Damn it. Damn it all. Yifeng's bravado was gone, replaced by pure terror. The last remaining hunter grabbed his arm, his face pale. Young master, stop screaming. We have to go now. Yifeng shut his mouth instantly. They bolted. But they didn't get far. A few yards ahead, a figure emerged from the gloom, standing perfectly still in the middle of the path. I stood there, spear in hand, watching them. Yifeng actually let out a sigh of relief. The tension of the unknown was gone. Now that he could see me, he felt in control again. You little rat. Done hiding, he sneered, his voice regaining its murderous edge. The last hunter glared at me, determined not to let me slip away again. I looked at them as if they were already dead. Only 2 of you left, I said quietly. I don't need to hide anymore. For a man who threatened my family, a quick death from the shadows was too good. You think you've won? Yifeng laughed, though it sounded forced. Who do you think you are? He lunged forward, and the last hunter followed right on his heels. I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, my spear moving like a strike from a dragon. I met Yifeng's attack head-on. The impact sent a shockwave through my arms. Yifeng's face paled. He groaned, stumbling back several steps. His eyes filled with sudden realization. He was a high-level rank 1 martial artist, yet I had just pushed him back with a single strike. I didn't give him time to recover. While he was off balance, I turned my fury on the last hunter. My spear movements were wide and oppressive, leaving him no room to breathe. Within seconds, I found the opening. Pshhh. I drove the spear through his chest and flicked it out, spraying his blood across the dirt. Yifeng looked horrified. In just a few hours, his 5-man team had been reduced to just him. Your turn, I said, stepping toward him. You think you've got me? Yifeng sneered when I got within 3 meters. He suddenly pointed a finger at me. A concentrated burst of chi shot toward my chest like a bullet. I reacted instantly, twisting my body mid-air. The energy beam grazed my shoulder and slammed into a massive tree behind me. The trunk snapped in half like a toothpick. My pupils shrunk. That power was no joke. Surprised? Yifeng mocked. This is a C-rank technique, the void-piercing finger. My uncle, the base commander, gave it to me. He was confident now. Even though he had only mastered the basics, the sheer power of a C-rank skill was enough to bridge the gap. Most hunters out here were commoners who only had access to low-level junk. Yifeng thought he was untouchable. I told you, he barked, firing another burst of chi. If you stayed hidden like a rat, I couldn't hurt you. But you came out. Now die. He kept firing, white streaks of energy tearing through the air. I was forced to dodge, unable to get close to him. Just a peasant after all. Yifeng laughed. He thought he was winning. He thought he was suppressing me. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't just dodging. My eyes were locked on his hand. Every time he fired, I analyzed the flow of his energy and the position of his fingers. I was learning. A few minutes later, he fired again. This time, I pretended to stumble, acting like my stamina was fading. Got you, Yifeng smirked. But as the energy beam flew toward me, I dropped my spear. I stood my ground and pointed my own finger directly at his. A beam of chi, identical to his own, erupted from my fingertip. The 2 beams of energy collided in midair. A violent explosion shook the ground, and both streaks of chi vanished into nothingness. Yifeng froze. His face twisted with pure, unfiltered shock. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. How was this possible? How could a random kid know the void-piercing finger? He didn't want to believe it. He gritted his teeth and fired again, but I matched him move for move. As I pointed my finger, my mind was racing, connecting the dots of the technique's flow. I wasn't just fighting anymore, I was refining. Yifeng's eyes widened. He let out a terrified scream. Are you kidding me? Did you just learn that right now? If he was shocked before, he was terrified now. In just a few minutes, I had stolen his family's signature technique. This was a B-rank skill. His uncle had spent a month teaching him just to reach the basic entry level, and even then, he was called a genius. Most rank 2 dancers couldn't learn this in a month. But I had mastered the basics while dodging for my life. He took a sharp breath, his shoulders trembling. He looked at my cold expression and realized he had provoked a monster. He knew he had to get out of there, or he was a dead man. He started backing away toward the edge of the forest, firing desperate shots to keep me at bay. Then, the air hummed. I pointed my finger. A beam of chi, far stronger than anything I'd fired before, tore through the air. It shattered Yifeng's attack and kept going. He didn't even have time to react. The beam pierced straight through his thigh. He collapsed, crashing into the dirt. Proficient level. He gasped, his voice trembling with horror. He forgot to even scream from the pain. He looked at me as I walked toward him, step by step. He looked at me like I wasn't human. How could someone learn a skill during a life-and-death struggle and then immediately jump from entry level to proficiency? He was still stuck at the bottom, and I had already surpassed him. Yifeng stammered. He saw the killing intent in my eyes. He tried to scramble back. You wouldn't dare kill me. My uncle will never let you go. Pain flared in his leg, sweat pouring down his face. He was shaking so hard his teeth rattled. Wait, let me go? I'll give you the manual for that B-rank technique. It's on me right now. You're a genius. I won't mess with you again, I swear. I cut him off. My voice was quiet. If I kill you, it's mine anyway. He tried to open his mouth again, but I didn't give him the chance. Poochie, several beams of chi erupted from my hand, piercing his forehead and his heart. He went limp instantly. I stood over him, my face cold. The moment he threatened my family, he was already dead. It was lucky I learned his technique during the fight, or finishing him off might have been a headache. I didn't waste time. I knelt down and searched the body. I wasn't the clumsy amateur I was on my first day. My movements were practiced and efficient. Within seconds, I pulled a manual from his pocket, the void-piercing finger. I felt a surge of excitement. Even with my talent, Yifeng only knew the basics, which limited how much I could deduce on the fly. Having the actual manual would let me push the skill to its absolute limit much faster. I moved to his gear. He had 5 massive bags filled with beast ears. Any one of them had as much loot as my own pack. I gathered them all. By the time the first light of dawn touched the trees, I was walking toward the edge of the forest. I was carrying 6 bulging backpacks. Suddenly, a black bear burst from the brush, roaring in a blind rage. I didn't even break my stride. I raised a finger. A thick beam of white chi, as wide as a man's arm, punched a hole straight through the bear's heart. Perfect mastery. I had reached the perfect stage of the void-piercing finger. The power was incredible. I finally had a mid-range attack that was fast, lethal, and hard to predict. As the outline of the dancer base appeared in the distance, I stopped. I looked at the manual in my hand. Yifeng's uncle was the base commander, a rank 3 dancer. If anyone found this book on me, I was finished. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out a lighter and burned the manual to ashes. I already had the technique at the perfect level. The book was useless to me now. Safety came first. I slung the 6 heavy bags over my shoulders and marched toward the base. Even at dawn, the plaza was packed. Hunters were returning from the wild, lining up at the settlement counters. I watched as a well-known group called the Thunder Team handed over 4 bags. The staff members started the count. 67 rank, 1 low-tier ears, 12 mid-tier. Total value, 230,000. The crowd erupted in whispers of envy. Thunder Team is insane. For bags in just a few days, that's more than I make in 3 months. Even the staff members smiled. You guys have the highest count I've seen this season. The team members leaned back, looking proud. But then, a loud "holy crap" echoed from the entrance of the plaza. Everyone turned. The crowd went silent. I walked into the light. My clothes were shredded and soaked in dried beast blood. I looked like I'd crawled out of a meat grinder. But it was the 6 massive, bulging backpacks on my shoulders that drew every eye. Blood was still dripping from the bottom of the bags, staining the pavement. Are those all beast ears? Someone stammered. 6 bags? How many did he kill? He's alone, and he looks like a high schooler. What school is he from? The Thunder Team stared at me, their pride evaporating. Someone in the back tried to scoff. They're probably all trash-tier beasts. Even if they are, someone snapped back. There are 6 bags of them. And he's by himself. The critic shut his mouth. It didn't matter what rank the beasts were. One kid bringing in that much loot was unheard of. Most people assumed I had just spent my time slaughtering the weakest creatures I could find. But even then, the sheer volume was staggering. I ignored the stares and walked straight toward the counter. I carried my heavy bags toward the settlement counter. The Thunder Team had just finished their count, and they were still basking in the glow of their success. But the moment I stepped into the light, the atmosphere shifted. A crowd of warriors swarmed around me, their eyes wide with curiosity. The Thunder Team looked annoyed. They had been the stars of the show just a second ago, and now everyone was looking at the kid in the shredded clothes. They stood off to the side, crossing their arms, waiting to see me fail. "Hello," a staff member said. His voice was unusually respectful. "You can just hand those bags to me." He stepped forward and personally took the heavy packs from my shoulders. The other warriors exchanged looks. This guy hadn't been nearly this polite to them. Only the elite teams usually got this kind of treatment. The staff member grabbed the first bag and tipped it over. Clatter, a mountain of beast ears spilled onto the floor. The crowd surged forward to get a better look. Angry black bear. Ghost moon wolf. Someone whispered, his voice trembling. Holy crap, these are all rank 1 beasts. I can't find a single unranked scrap in here. I'm stunned, another added. How can one person be this efficient? They stared at the pile, then their eyes darted to the other 5 bulging backpacks. Their hearts were visibly racing. There was no way, right? No way all 6 bags were filled with rank 1 trophies. One warrior swallowed hard. It's impossible. Before he could finish his sentence, the staff member grabbed the remaining bags and dumped them all. Within seconds, the floor of the settlement point was paved with beast ears. The warriors looked down, and I could see the color draining from their faces. Their scalps were tingling with shock. Unbelievable, a man muttered. Still not a single low-tier beast. They're all rank 1. There are dozens of mid-tier ears here, even a few high-tier ones. They looked at me like they were seeing a ghost. To them, I wasn't a student anymore. I was a monster. Wait, look at this, a warrior screamed, pointing at something in the pile. Is that a black jade python scale? The crowd froze. The black jade python was a peak-level rank 1 beast, the kind of nightmare most teams ran away from on sight. The staff member picked up the dark, shimmering scale and examined it. He nodded slowly, his eyes full of wonder. Yes, this is definitely from a black jade python. The room erupted. The Thunder team, who had been looking for a reason to scoff, went dead silent. They had encountered one of those snakes once and nearly lost their entire team. Now, they were staring at a teenager who had hunted one down single-handedly. Their pride didn't just evaporate. It turned into pure, unadulterated fear. The staff member looked up at me, a thought striking him. The black jade python has a crystal-clear scale on its forehead. Did you bring that back too? I nodded and pulled the unique scale from my pocket. That's it, he shouted, his face lighting up. The warrior base buys these specifically. We pay a premium. Are you selling? How much? I asked. He held up one finger. 10,000 blue star coins. I blinked. A high-tier beast ear was only worth 5,000. This single scale was worth double that. But considering how dangerous those pythons were, it made sense. Deal, I said. Great. Let me finish the full count. He went to work. When he finally looked up, his hands were shaking slightly. He cleared his throat to announce the results. Rank 1, low tier, 72 beasts. Rank 1, mid tier, 83 beasts. Rank 1, high tier, 17 beasts. Plus the python scale. He took a deep breath. Total value, 416,000 blue star coins. The room went nuclear. 416,000? I couldn't earn that in 6 months. I'm only at the beginning of rank 1. At my pace, this would take me 2.5 years. Is this what a genius looks like? It's not even fair. The Thunder team just shook their heads. Any lingering thoughts of competition were gone. They had 5 people and made 230,000. I was 1 person, and I had doubled their score. The transaction went through quickly. I pulled out my phone and saw the notification. 416,000 coins had hit my account. I turned to leave, and the crowd of warriors instinctively parted like the Red Sea, giving me a clear path to the exit. Then, a massive boom echoed through the hall. A figure smashed through a second-story window, glass raining down as he landed on the plaza floor. Nobody moves, he roared. Lock down the base. Don't let a single fly escape. The silence was deafening. The man standing there was Yi Chi, the head of the entire base. The warriors looked confused and terrified as guards rushed to block every exit. Manager Yi, someone asked timidly. What's happening? Yi Chi scanned the crowd, his eyes cold and murderous. My nephew, Yi Feng, has been murdered. The warriors' eyes widened. Yi Feng was dead? Most of them struggled to hide the smirks forming on their faces. Yi Feng had spent the last few days robbing almost everyone in the wild. If it weren't for his uncle's status, someone would have killed him long ago. Inside, they were cheering. Starting now, Yi Chi continued, his voice like ice. Everyone will be searched. Only after you are cleared of suspicion can you leave. The crowd groaned. A search? On what grounds? Just because your nephew died? One man stepped forward. Manager Yi, this search is... Shut up. Yi Chi snapped, his killing intent flaring. Yi Feng was carrying a B-rank martial technique. Whoever killed him definitely took it. Until I find it, nobody leaves. A B-rank technique. The crowd gasped. Yi Chi was incredibly wealthy to give his nephew something that valuable. But the frustration remained. They didn't want to be treated like criminals. Still, looking at the rage in Yi Chi's eyes, no one dared to speak up again. Staff members began moving through the crowd, patting people down. Yi Chi stood by like a hawk, watching every movement. Then, his eyes drifted to the settlement counter. He saw the mountains of beast ears I had just turned in. Who killed all of these? Yi Chi asked coldly. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Yi Chi's oppressive gaze followed. When he saw my young face, a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes, followed quickly by suspicion. You're a rank 1 beginner, he said, stepping toward me. How could you kill this many beasts? He paused, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. I think you killed my nephew and stole these bags from him. You had the nerve to come back here and try to cash them in? You've got guts, kid. The other warriors looked at me with pity. They knew how this worked. Yi Chi didn't need proof. He just needed a target. Search him. Now, Yi Chi ordered. A staff member approached me, reaching out. Before he could touch me, I leveled my spear, the tip resting inches from his throat. He froze. The entire room held its breath. Nobody expected me to refuse the search. Yi Chi's eyes flashed with a murderous glint. He started walking toward me, his aura heavy and suffocating. Before he could speak, I looked him dead in the eye, my face expressionless. I'm a student at Star City First High School, I said. That one sentence made Yi Chi freeze in his tracks. He looked at my youthful face, then glanced back at the mountain of beast ears I had turned in. Doubt flickered in his eyes. A student from the first high school who could kill this many beasts was undoubtedly a genius. He didn't care about offending ordinary warriors by searching them, but a genius like this? If I grew up and became powerful, I'd be a nightmare for him. Yi Chi hesitated, but his desire to find his nephew's killer eventually won out. His tone softened, losing its icy edge. My nephew was murdered, he said, his voice level. I have to search everyone, but I won't make you do it for nothing. Cooperate with me, give me some face, and I'll give you 10,000 blue star coins as compensation. How about it? I furrowed my brows, acting annoyed and hesitant. Seeing my reluctance, Yi Chi frowned and held up 3 fingers. 30,000, he barked. I stayed silent for a moment, pretending to think it over. Finally, I gave a stiff nod. Fine. The staff member stepped forward and conducted a thorough search. After a few minutes, he shook his head at Yi Chi. There was nothing. Fine. You can go, Yi Chi said, waving me off. He ordered the staff to transfer 30,000 coins to my account immediately. Even after receiving the money, I didn't rush to leave. I took my time, heading to the showers to wash off the blood and grime, then changed into a clean set of clothes. I moved with total calm. I knew Yi Chi was still watching me. By the time I walked toward the exit of the base, his suspicion had finally vanished. No killer would be this relaxed. Keep searching. I heard Yi Chi's cold voice echoing behind me. Nobody leaves until they're cleared. Once I stepped outside the base, my heart started hammering against my ribs. That was close. I had been cautious enough to burn the void-breaking plant technique manual before coming back. If I hadn't, I would be a dead man right now. Yi Chi was ruthless. Most people wouldn't have the heart to destroy a B-rank technique manual before fully mastering it, but Yi Chi would never guess the truth. He couldn't imagine that someone could master a B-rank skill to the perfect level in just a few hours during the trek back from the forest. I hailed a taxi at the roadside. Now that I was a rank 1 dancer, my first stop was the Dancer Association. I needed to pass the official assessment and get my hands on the guidance book. But it wasn't just about the book. Once I was registered, I'd qualify for a monthly dancer stipend. As the taxi drove toward the city, I pulled up my attribute panel to check my progress. Name, Suhong. Talent, Eternal Unparalleled. Blood Chi, 103. Mental Power, 23. Body Constitution, 6%. Martial Techniques, Roaring Sea Spear, Great Success. Thunderbolt Fist, Perfect. Vajra Fist, Perfect. Floating Light Palm, Perfect. Sky Step, Perfect. Dance Points, 534. My blood chi had increased by 0.8 points over the last 4 days. It made sense. I had spent every waking moment in life or death battles. But what really shocked me was the body constitution. It had jumped from 3% to 6%. It must have increased when I broke through to rank 1. Still, a major breakthrough only gave me 3%. Without my system, reaching 100% would be impossible. No wonder special constitutions were so rare. I needed to know how many points it cost to upgrade. I also noticed my mental power hadn't budged. I clearly had no natural talent for mental arts, so I'd have to rely on the system for that too. I looked at my dance points. 534. It was a massive amount. I could use them to boost my blood chi and reach rank 1 middle stage easily, but I decided to prioritize my constitution. I put 1 point into body constitution. It shifted from 6% to 6.1%. I felt a tiny surge of strength. It was small but real. I did the math. To gain 1% progress, I needed 10 points. Mental power was the same ratio. I decided to go all in on my body first. I dumped 300 points into body constitution, bringing the progress to 36.1%. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook my entire body. I was sitting in the front passenger seat of the taxi when my muscles suddenly bulged. My veins popped, and my clothes groaned under the pressure, threatening to rip apart. In an instant, I transformed from a lean teenager into a mountain of muscle. With my youthful face and massive frame, I looked completely absurd. The taxi driver almost wet himself. He started shaking, his hands trembling on the wheel. "Big brother, what did I do?" he stammered. "Just tell me, I'll change. Please." I couldn't answer him. I felt an explosion of raw power coursing through my veins. I was leagues stronger than I had been just seconds ago. After a moment, the surge subsided, and my muscles relaxed back to their original size. I looked down at my stretched-out shirt. I needed to start buying elastic clothing, or people were going to think I was some kind of freak. I looked at the terrified driver and gave him an apologetic smile. "Don't worry, I'm fine." The driver saw that I had calmed down and let out a long, shaky breath. He looked like I'd just shaved 10 years off his life. I ignored him and focused back on my interface. I had 534.5 Dao points left, and it was time to get stronger. I dumped 200 points into my blood chi. The number jumped from 103 to 123 instantly. Maybe it was because I had increased my constitution first, but I didn't feel any discomfort this time. The power just integrated into my body smoothly. With only 34 points remaining, I funneled them all into my mental power, raising it from 23.1 to 26.5. My head cleared instantly. The lingering exhaustion from days of hunting beasts in the wild vanished. I felt sharp and alert. The rest of the trip was quiet. The taxi pulled up to a massive skyscraper in the city center, the Dancer Association. I paid the driver, stepped out, and headed straight for the front desk. I asked for the location of the Rank 1 Dancer assessment and started walking toward the testing hall. "Teacher, my talent isn't bad, right?" A voice echoed behind me. Not only did my injuries heal, but I even broke through to become a Rank 1 dancer. "It's decent," a deeper voice replied. "Perform well today. Don't embarrass me." The voices sounded familiar. I glanced back and saw Li Ming and his master, Jiang Ming, walking my way. I didn't linger. I turned my head back and kept walking toward the assessment area. Whether Li Ming broke through or not was none of my business. Li Ming stopped and stared at my back, his brow furrowed. "Huh, that guy's back looks familiar." He thought for a moment, but couldn't place me. He shook his head, dismissed the thought, and followed Jiang Ming to the registration desk. When the staff pointed them toward the right, Li Ming froze. He watched me enter the same hallway, and his eyes widened. At that age, he's already a Rank 1 dancer? Jiang Ming was surprised too, but seeing his student's shock, he took the chance to give him a lecture. "See that? Don't get arrogant. You think breaking through to Rank 1 is a big deal? That kid looks like a high schooler, years younger than you, and he's at the same level." Li Ming scoffed. "Teacher, I just started training late. If I had started at his age, I'd be way ahead of him." He flashed a confident, cocky smile. "Besides, dancers are judged by combat power. With my mastery of the Benlei fist, I could take down a student like him in one punch." Jiang Ming sighed and shook his head. Sometimes having a talented disciple was a headache. After Li Ming lost that underground match, he had humbled himself for a bit. But the moment he broke through to Rank 1, his old, arrogant personality came roaring back. Jiang Ming wanted to use me to show Li Ming there was always someone better, but he knew his student had a point. A Rank 1 dancer with high-level fist mastery was a force to be reckoned with. If he pushed Li Ming too hard, the boy would probably just go pick a fight with me to prove his point. "Enough talk," Jiang Ming said. "Go take the test." I arrived at the testing area, and a staff member told me to wait. I leaned against the wall and scanned the room. The other candidates were mostly middle-aged men. They all stared at me with varying degrees of shock and envy. To them, seeing a teenager at a rank 1 assessment meant they were looking at a genius. Most of these men had failed this test multiple times already. Li Ming and Jiang Ming walked in a moment later. When Li Ming saw me looking at him, he let out a sharp, dismissive grunt. He wanted to see if I could actually pass. The staff member stepped forward to announce the rules. The assessment consists of 2 parts, blood chi and combat power. Rank 1 requires 100 blood chi. For combat power, you will take 3 strikes. The average must exceed 1,000. Let's begin. The middle-aged men went first. The first candidate stepped up. Blood chi, 102. Combat power, 992, 994, 1003. Failed. The room grew tense. These men were barely scraping by. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall to rest. Li Ming watched the failures with pure disdain. Jiang Ming remained expressionless. To him, this was just a formality. He knew Li Ming would pass. His only curiosity was whether I was a real talent or just a kid who had barely reached the threshold and wanted to test his luck. Part of him hoped I would outperform Li Ming just to humble the boy, but he doubted it. He had trained Li Ming himself. A random kid couldn't just show up and surpass his best student. Out of the dozen middle-aged men, only 3 passed. They didn't leave, though. They gathered in the corner, whispering and placing bets on whether the young man or the boy would pass. The older one definitely will, one whispered. He came with a master. He looks prepared. The kid? He came alone. Probably just wants to see where he stands. Even if he fails, being here at his age is incredible. I stayed silent, but Li Ming looked annoyed that they were calling me a genius in the same breath as him. He stepped up to the machine to start his test. First was blood chi. The screen flashed, 105. Passed. Then came the combat test. Li Ming took a deep breath. He lunged forward, his fist whistling through the air with 3 distinct sonic booms. The numbers on the monitor blurred, finally stopping at 1763. Holy crap, are you serious? One of the older men shouted. 105 blood chi, but a score of 1763? That's almost rank 1 middle stage power. His technique must be at least C rank. He's a total genius. The veterans looked crushed. They were 40 years old and couldn't even hit 1,000, yet this young man had nearly doubled it on his first try. Li Ming's lips curled into a smug grin. He threw 2 more punches, 1721 and 1690. Li Ming passed, the staff member announced, looking impressed. Li Ming walked back, chest puffed out. He looked at me and smirked. Your turn, kid. The room went silent. Everyone turned their eyes toward me, wondering what the high schooler could do. The middle-aged men in the room could sense the tension. They watched as Li Ming glared at me, his eyes full of hostility. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. I didn't even look at him. I simply turned my back and walked straight toward the blood chi testing machine. Li Ming scoffed, crossing his arms as he prepared to watch me fail. His teacher, Jiang Ming, sighed and shook his head. I could tell he was disappointed in his student's arrogance. He was probably hoping to find a real genius in Star City who could finally humble Li Ming. He didn't have to wait long. I stepped up to the machine. As the sensors scanned me, a collective gasp rippled through the room. The veterans stared at the screen, their eyes wide with disbelief. Li Ming froze. His brain seemed to short-circuit as he stared at the glowing red numbers. Blood chi, 123. Jiang Ming rubbed his eyes, convinced he was hallucinating. When he looked again, the number hadn't changed. He took a sharp breath, his gaze shifting to me. I stood there, calm and composed. At my age, having a blood chi score that high was unheard of. It was nearly 20 points higher than Li Ming's genius score. Li Ming's face shifted through a dozen shades of red and purple. He looked like a total clown. I could see him muttering to himself, trying to regain his pride. He kept whispering that blood chi didn't matter and that combat power was the only thing that counted. He was desperate to believe he was still superior. The staff member finally snapped out of his trance. He cleared his throat and announced that I had passed the first stage. Now, it was time for the combat test. I walked over to the heavy target. Everyone in the room followed, their eyes glued to me. I looked at the padded surface and felt a surge of anticipation. My body felt different, stronger, more dense. I decided to test my raw strength first. I wouldn't use any techniques. No Vajra fist. No special moves. Just my own muscle. I took a deep breath. I coiled my body, sinking low like a tiger preparing to pounce. Then, I exploded forward. My fist slammed into the target with a thunderous boom that echoed through the hall. The massive machine didn't just shake. It was torn from its moorings, sliding dozens of meters across the floor before flipping over and crashing into the wall. The silence that followed was deafening. Li Ming looked like he'd been slapped. When he had hit the machine, it hadn't moved an inch. I had just sent it flying across the room with a single punch. The staff member scrambled over to the wreckage. He tried to lift the machine back up, but as he caught a glimpse of the screen, he yelped and dropped it again. His hands were shaking. He stepped aside, allowing the crowd to see the display. Combat Power, 1862. The room erupted. The older martial artists were shouting, unable to process what they were seeing. I had just beaten Li Ming's best score, and I had done it without even using a martial technique. Li Ming's knees buckled. He slumped to the floor, his face pale and his eyes vacant. He was completely broken. Jiang Ming stared at my back, his spine stiff with shock. A cold chill seemed to run down his neck. He realized the same thing everyone else did. If I could do that with raw strength, what would happen if I actually tried? Second test, the staff member whispered, his voice trembling with respect. I exhaled slowly. I was satisfied with my physical power, but I wanted to see my true limit. I adjusted my stance and focused my mind. This time, I didn't hold back. I channeled every ounce of energy into a focused strike. My fist hit the target like a falling star. There was a high-pitched scream of tearing metal, and then the target simply disintegrated. It exploded into fragments under the pressure of my strike. The numbers on the monitor blurred, racing upward at a terrifying speed. It smashed through the 2,000 mark. Then 2,500. It didn't stop until it hit a final, staggering number. Combat Power, 3004. A score of 3,000 was the benchmark for a rank 1 high-stage warrior. I was still a student, yet I was already hitting with the force of a seasoned veteran. The middle-aged men looked at me with genuine fear in their eyes. Jiang Ming lost all composure, his voice cracking as he stared at the screen. I had moved beyond being a genius. I was a monster. My rank 1 combat power was comparable to a rank 1 high-stage warrior. The room went silent. What kind of talent was this? Jiang Ming swallowed hard, his eyes wide. In top-tier cities like the demon capital, there were geniuses with special physiques who possessed terrifying power. They could crush opponents in the same realm with a single blow. Since I hadn't even used a technique for my first hit and still beat Li Ming, Jiang Ming was convinced I was one of those monsters. He glanced at Li Ming, who was still slumped on the floor. Jiang Ming had wanted to find a genius to humble Li Ming's arrogance, but he hadn't expected to bring him face-to-face with a freak of nature. This wasn't a lesson anymore. It was a soul-crushing defeat. Li Ming looked like he had lost his very spirit, staring blankly at the screen. Jiang Ming stepped forward and slapped him across the face to snap him out of it. He has a special physique, Jiang Ming told him firmly. It's normal that you aren't his match. Keep your head on straight. The school monthly exams are coming up. You should be competing with normal students, not setting your sights on a monster like him. Meanwhile, I looked at the shattered remains of the target. The staff member's mouth was twitching. Do I have to pay for that? I asked, feeling a bit awkward. I had been so focused on testing my limits that I forgot to wonder if the machine could actually take the hit. Of course not, the staff member stammered. Does it need to be fixed? I gestured to the wreckage. No, there's no need for a third test. You've passed. He shook his head frantically. If they fixed it just for me to blow it up again, what was the point? In the office of the Star City Dance Association, President Wu Linxian sat at her desk, scrolling through messages on her phone. She looked stressed. People thought being a branch president was all glitz and glamour, but she knew the truth. If Star City didn't produce some brilliant results this year, her career was over. The college entrance exams were approaching, and presidents from other cities were constantly bragging in their group chats about the geniuses they had discovered. Star City was ranked near the bottom of Jiangnan province. We had a few talents, but they paled in comparison to the neighboring cities. My time is up, she sighed, leaning back. A knock at the door startled her. An employee burst in, gasping for air. What's the rush? Wu Linxian frowned. Sit down. Have some water. She poured a cup for him and one for herself. President, the man wheezed. A monster just appeared in the rank 1 assessment. Wu Linxian sprayed her water across the room. She didn't even bother to wipe her face as she jumped up, her eyes burning with excitement. A monster? Tell me everything. The staff member quickly explained. A rank 1 low-stage candidate. Raw physical power of 1800. A combat score of 3004 with a technique. To hell with anyone trying to kick me out of my seat. Wu Linxian muttered before letting out a wild laugh. Suddenly, she moved. There was a loud boom, and she vanished. The staff member stared at the human-shaped hole she had just smashed through the office wall. She was so happy she didn't even bother using the door. Downstairs, I was walking toward the second floor with a few middle-aged men who had also passed. The staff member leading us was incredibly attentive to me, practically ignoring the others. They didn't mind. In this world, geniuses were meant to be courted. Before we reached the stairs, a figure blurred in front of us. The air rushed past, and a tall, elegant woman in her 30s appeared. President, why are you down here? The staff member gasped. Wu Linxian's eyes skipped over everyone else and locked onto me. She gave me a warm smile. Hello, I am Wu Linxian, the president of the Star City Dance Association. I'm Su Hong. I replied, a bit surprised that the big boss had come to see me personally. After a few words, she insisted on handling my registration herself. The older men watched us go, shaking their heads in envy. A genius is a genius, one whispered. Even the president does the paperwork for him. Su Hong, you're still in high school, right? Wu Linxian asked as we walked. Yes, I'm at Star City First High. She paused, her jaw tightening. First High? That old Foxley Chengshan had told her he only had 2 ordinary rank 1 students this year. He had been crying poverty to her while hiding a monster like me. She made a mental note to find an excuse to beat him up later. The registration took less than a minute. As a rank 1 warrior, I was now entitled to a monthly stipend of 10,000 Blue Star coins. On top of that, I got to choose a guiding technique for free. My heart raced. 10,000 coins was more than my uncle and aunt earned in a month. The first thing I was going to do was tell my uncle to quit his job and fire his boss. Guiding techniques allow you to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Wu Linxian explained gently as she led me to the archives. Spiritual energy has different attributes, and different techniques are designed to help you harness those specific elements. For example, I practiced the sky flame guiding technique, Wu Linxian said, her voice filled with pride. It primarily absorbs fire attribute spiritual energy. Not only does it strengthen the body, but it also adds a burning element to my attacks. It makes them far more lethal. I listened with total focus. This wasn't the kind of stuff they taught in our high school textbooks. Before today, I thought guiding techniques were just simple breathing exercises to suck in energy. I didn't realize there was this much depth to it. Wu Linxian opened her palm. Suddenly, a ball of intense red flame flickered into existence right above her skin. The heat was immediate. I watched as the air around the flame distorted, turning into thin wisps of black smoke. A pungent, scorched smell filled the room. Then, she let the flames wrap around her fist. She threw a casual punch into the empty air. Boom. A fiery fist imprint shot forward like a projectile. Just as it was about to smash into the wall, Wu Linxian blew a soft breath toward it. The flame dissipated instantly, vanishing into thin air. I stared, my eyes widening. That was incredible. With that kind of elemental power, a regular warrior wouldn't stand a chance. My heart started thumping against my ribs. I wanted that power. Of course, manifesting attributes externally isn't easy, she cautioned, seeing my excitement. For a rank 1 warrior, even getting a tiny spark on your fist is considered an achievement. I nodded, absorbing every word. She led me to a heavy door at the end of the hall. I took a deep breath and stepped inside with her. This was the testing room. There are 7 main attributes of spiritual energy, Wu Linxian explained. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning, and wind. Each has its own strengths. But if we're talking about pure destructive power, the ranking is clear. Lightning is first, metal is second, and fire is third. My eyes lit up. Lightning is the strongest? I immediately wanted the lightning guiding technique. Wulinxian seemed to read my mind. She laughed softly. If everyone had a choice, who wouldn't want to practice lightning? I stayed quiet, waiting for the catch. Seeing my restraint, she looked even more impressed with me. You can't just pick whatever you want, she said. It all depends on your affinity. You have to be compatible with the technique. I felt a rare surge of nervousness. I really wanted that top-tier lightning power, but affinity was something you were born with. It was out of my hands. Don't worry, Wulinxian said, her tone almost envious. You managed to hit a combat power of 1,863 at rank 1 without using any martial arts. That suggests you might have a special constitution that hasn't fully awakened yet. Even if your highest affinity isn't for the best element, your future is still bright. She paused, then added, You can call me Sister Wu. Do you know how strong a special constitution is? People with those are invincible among their peers. For them, jumping ranks to fight stronger opponents is as easy as drinking water. Invincible. Jumping ranks. My mind raced. If I pushed my Vajra body progress to 100%, would that count as a special constitution? I needed to earn more martial points, and fast. Back to the techniques, Sister Wu continued. My highest affinity is for the sky flame. If I forced myself to practice a lightning technique, my cultivation speed and my actual combat power would be much lower than what I have now. She pulled out 7 crystal balls, each a different color. These represent the 7 attributes. When you put your hand on them, they light up. The more the color fills the crystal, the higher your affinity. She decided to show me how it worked. She placed her hand on the red crystal. Instantly, it glowed with a piercing red light. I watched as the glow filled about 4/5 of the sphere. My affinity for sky flame is about 80%, she said with a proud smile. A typical warrior only has 20 or 30%. 80 is considered extremely high. It made sense. That's probably why she was a rank 5 warrior and a branch president in her 30s. Now your turn. She looked at me, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. She clearly expected me to be good, maybe around 90%. In her mind, that would already make me a top-tier genius. Even a 1% difference at that level was a massive gap in potential. I walked up to the fire crystal, my palms a bit sweaty. I reached out and touched the cold glass. Flash. A light far more blinding than hers erupted. In a split second, the red glow saturated the entire crystal. There wasn't a single empty spot left. The crimson light was so intense it filled the entire room, turning everything red. Sister Wu's smile froze. Her jaw dropped. What is this? She stammered. The crystal, it's full? It's completely full. She let out a literal scream. She grabbed my shoulders, her eyes burning with a wild, frantic heat. 100%. You have a 100% affinity for fire. I shook my head, a bit dazed. Is that good? Good. She was so excited her face was turning red. It means when you practice the sky flame technique, you absorb every single drop of fire energy from the atmosphere. 0 waste. Your cultivation efficiency will be the highest possible. She was actually trembling. She told me that her 80% affinity meant she lost 20% of the energy she tried to absorb. That 20% loss was why it took her years to reach rank 5, and she had never seen 100% affinity in person. They existed, sure, but only in the massive capital cities like Mo City or the Imperial Capital. This was just Star City, a mid to lower tier city in Jiangnan province. I have a monster on my hands, she whispered to herself. She looked like she wanted to grab her phone and brag to all the other presidents, but then she stopped herself. She looked paranoid. No, I have to keep this quiet. If those old vultures find out, they'll try to steal you away from me. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Su-hong, don't even bother testing the others. You're practicing the sky flame technique. With your potential and that possible special constitution, you're destined to be a powerhouse. I scratched my head. To be honest, I still kind of wanted to see what happened if I touched the other crystals. When I told her that, she looked at me like I had grown a second head. This was 100% affinity. What was there to even hesitate about? Wulinxian looked like she wanted to scream. If this were her, she would have been dancing with joy, yet here I was, still looking uncertain. For the first time in her life, the woman everyone called a genius felt the crushing weight of the gap between our talents. She took a breath to steady her nerves. Fine, she said slowly. Try the others. But I'm telling you now, nothing else will be this high. I nodded and reached for the lightning crystal. The second my fingers brushed the glass, a violent flash of purple light exploded inside. It filled the entire sphere instantly. I could even hear the faint, crackling roar of thunder echoing in the room. Wu Linxian stood frozen. Her mind went completely blank. Another full tank. Another 100%. She looked like she was losing her mind. How was this even possible? To have a perfect affinity for fire was a miracle, but to have it for lightning too? That was monstrous. It took her a long time to find her voice again. She swallowed hard, staring at me like I was some kind of alien creature. I didn't notice her stare. I was looking at the glowing lightning crystal and feeling a bit suspicious. If my eternal peerless talent was as powerful as I thought, would every attribute be the same? I reached out for the wind crystal. Wu Linxian didn't even have words left. Lightning was the most aggressive, powerful element. What more could I possibly want? Having two perfect affinities was already beyond ridiculous. There was no way a third. The wind crystal ignited with a brilliant light. Wu Linxian looked like she'd been struck by a physical blow. A third one? It couldn't be. Before she could even finish that thought, I touched the gold crystal. It lit up. Her eyes went dull, her expression turning vacant. The wood crystal maxed out. She started gasping for air. The water crystal hit 100%. Her face went numb. The earth crystal followed suit. She had checked out completely. Her scalp was crawling with pure shock. All of them. Every single one. There are only 7 types of spiritual energy in the world, and I was a perfect match for all of them. She probably thought she was trapped in a dream. It was too surreal to be true. I, on the other hand, finally understood. My talent didn't play favorites. I could pick whatever I wanted because I was perfect at everything. But that was actually the problem. I scratched my head, feeling a genuine wave of frustration. When Wu Linxian saw me looking annoyed, she looked like she might spit blood. What could you possibly be upset about? She demanded. You have your pick of the litter. That's the problem, I said, looking pained. Since they're all at 100%, giving up any of them feels like a massive waste. She gritted her teeth so hard I thought they might snap. I was being greedy, and she clearly wanted to hit me. She had been the envy of everyone with her 80% fire affinity, and here I was, complaining about having too much. Sister Wu, I asked tentatively, can I have the introductory manuals for all 7 attributes? She blinked, her eyes widening. You want to practice all of them? No way. Wait. She stopped herself, falling into deep thought. Technically, there was no rule against it. Probably because the people who wrote the rules never imagined someone like me would exist. There's no rule, she said hesitantly, but nobody has ever done it. Even if it works, your progress will be 7 times slower. Are you sure? I gave her a small smile. I won't necessarily do all 7 forever. I just can't decide yet. I want to try them all out, and if it doesn't work, I'll just stick to lightning. She let out a long breath of relief. She was terrified I was going to ruin my future. She told me about people in the past who tried to balance multiple elements and ended up stuck as rank 1 warriors for decades. Sure, they were invincible against people of their own rank, but what was the point of being the strongest rank 1 if you could never level up? She believed that with a single focus, I could become a world-class powerhouse in 20 years. If I did all 7, I might never hit rank 3. Fine, she sighed, handing over the manuals. I'll give them to you. Just don't get stubborn. Don't waste your life. I thanked her and sat down, eager to start. Start with the sky flame technique, she suggested. I know it best, so I can help you. Once you get the hang of it, switching to lightning will be easier. I nodded and opened the book. Wu Linxian stood to the side and pulled out her phone to start a timer. When she had started, it took her 12 hours to reach the first stage. With my talent, she figured I might do it in 2 or 3. That alone would be enough to terrify the world. Sister Wu, I said after a moment. I think I've got it. She looked up, her face a mask of disbelief. Already? It hasn't even been. She looked down at the timer on her phone, and her expression turned to pure horror. 34 seconds. It hadn't even been a full minute. You're joking, right? she whispered. I don't think so, I said, scratching my head. I can feel the fire energy entering my body and merging with my blood. Is that how it's supposed to feel? Would you like the summary of the next chapter? I watched her closely. Her throat moved as she tried to swallow, but her mouth looked bone dry. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Try to control that fire energy, Wulincian said, her voice cracking. Focus it. Try to throw a punch. I did exactly what she said. I took a breath, visualized the heat, and threw a straight right. As my fist cut through the air, a tiny, flickering flame danced across my knuckles. It wasn't much, but it was there. The moment she saw that spark, her mind seemed to go blank. She just stood there, frozen, staring at my hand like it was a ticking bomb. Sister Wu, I asked, pulling my hand back. Does this count as reaching the first stage? My voice snapped her out of it. Her mouth twitched, a strange mix of a smile and a grimace. She nodded mechanically. You reached it, she whispered. Internally, she was screaming. 34 seconds. Not even a full minute. She wanted to slap herself for thinking it would take me 2 hours. She realized then that you couldn't use common sense to measure someone with 100% compatibility in all 7 elements. My talent was simply breaking her reality. So that's it, I said, feeling a bit underwhelmed. That was actually pretty easy. I thought it would take at least a few minutes. I saw her eyes flare with a sudden, desperate urge to hit me. I didn't realize that every word I said was like a dagger to her pride. Sister Wu, I asked, genuinely curious. How many minutes did it take you the first time? She opened her mouth to snap at me, then quickly shut it. She realized that if I could do it in 34 seconds, me asking about minutes was actually me being polite. She didn't want to admit it took her 12 hours. She didn't want to lose face. About 3 or 4 minutes, she lied, her face turning a bit red. I nodded, satisfied with that answer. Since she seemed knowledgeable, I decided to ask about something else that had been on my mind. Do you know much about mental masters? Her eyes nearly popped out of her head. Don't tell me you're a mental master too, she gasped. If you have perfect elemental affinity and you're a mental master, the other geniuses in your generation should just go find a wall to run into. I let out a dry laugh. No, I'm just curious. I want to know how people awaken that power. She let out a long, shaky sigh of relief. Good. That's good. She walked over to a shelf and brought back a strange-looking metallic helmet. This measures mental strength. Put it on. While I strapped it on, she explained the basics. Nobody really knows the secret to awakening. Some people are born weak and wake up powerful overnight. Others stay on the verge of awakening their whole lives and never cross the line. But usually, a mental master has a mental strength score of at least 100. I checked my system interface. My mental strength was only 26.5. I had a long way to go. The helmet hummed, and the result flashed, 26.5. Perfectly average. Wu Linxian relaxed visibly. She wasn't rooting against me, but she had taken so many shocks today that her heart couldn't handle another one. She looked at me, expecting to see disappointment, but I was calm. She couldn't help but be impressed. With talent like mine and a mind this steady, my future was limitless. Suhong, she said, her tone turning serious. Your school has monthly exams tomorrow, right? Yeah, I replied. I'm surprised you follow school schedules. Give it your all, she said firmly. Don't hold back. Not even a little. I was confused. I already planned to win, but she was acting like there was something much bigger at stake. When I asked her why, her gaze drifted toward the window. The friction between the human race and the various tribes on the Myriad Realms battlefield is getting worse, she sighed. A full-scale war could break out any day. The higher-ups have decided to start a genius training camp. They're going to pour massive resources into the younger generation to make them grow as fast as possible. In Star City, the monthly exam is the qualifier. Only the best will get in. I froze. I knew things were tense at the borders, but I didn't realize we were on the brink of a total war. I used to think I had plenty of time. My only goal was to make enough money so my uncle, aunt, and siblings could live a good life. But if the human race lost this war, there would be no home to protect. My uncle who worked himself to the bone, my aunt, little Xiaoming, they would all be slaughtered. A cold sense of urgency washed over me. I couldn't just be good anymore. I had to be the strongest. I'll be at that camp. No matter what. She watched me. She saw the transformation in my eyes. A moment ago, I was just a talented kid. Now, the look in my eyes was something else entirely. It was the look of a man who had found his purpose. Wulincian watched me. She saw the grit and maturity behind my youthful face. They say people can change in an instant, and looking at me, she finally believed it. She gave me a small, encouraging smile and pumped her fist in the air. "Give it your all," she cheered. I left the Dancer Association and started the walk home. It was dusk. The streets near the schools were crowded with parents waiting at the gates. I watched as they crouched down, arms wide open, catching their children who ran toward them with pure joy. I stood there for a long time, just watching. Then, I turned and kept walking. I looked up at the darkening sky. I remembered the nights I spent watching my aunt apply medicinal patches to my uncle's bruised back, her face full of heartache. Back then, I felt useless. "I'm the pillar of this house," my uncle, Su Guoming, used to say. But I had grown up now. I had the strength to take the burden from his shoulders. I had the power to protect this small, fragile piece. If I was the pillar for my family, who was holding up the sky for the human race, my grip tightened. I needed to be strong. Not just school strong, but powerful enough that if the great heroes of humanity ever fell, I could step forward and hold up the world myself. If anyone ever asked me to choose between my family and the human race, I wouldn't choose. I'd just crush anyone who dared to threaten either. When I got home, the atmosphere was different. I had left over 100,000 coins with them previously. My aunt, Chenlon, was smiling more. My uncle wasn't working late anymore. He was actually coming home on time to rest his body. My younger siblings, Su Xiaohai and Su Xiaoming, were training like their lives depended on it. They still remembered the day I dumped 21,000 coins on the table and the look of pride on our parents' faces. They wanted to make Mom and Dad proud too. "I'm back," I called out. The house came alive. They all rushed to the door. "You're finally home," my aunt cried, looking me over with worried eyes. "Look at you, you've gotten so thin. Are they not feeding you at school?" I laughed. I was actually much more muscular than before, but to her, I'd always be the kid who needed a meal. My uncle looked relieved just to see me standing there. Then, Xiaoming and Xiaohai lunged at me, hanging off my arms like little monkeys. After the chaos settled, I looked at my uncle seriously. "Uncle, don't go to work anymore. I can support us now." Su Guoming froze. He looked touched, but he shook his head. "Xiaohong, the college entrance exams are coming. You need to save your money for your martial arts training. It's expensive." "I'm a rank 1 dancer now," I interrupted with a grin. "I get a monthly subsidy of 10,000 Blue Star coins from the government. You really don't need to work." The room went silent. My uncle, my aunt, and the kids all stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Before they could process it, I pulled out a bank card and set it on the table. "There's over 400,000 in here. Take it. Use it." Before leaving the association, Wu Linxian had told me that the elite training camp used a contribution point system. Cash was useless there. So, I gave them everything, the money from hunting beasts plus my savings. I only kept 30,000 for the camp's registration fee. Whoa, for 100,000. Xiaohai and Xiaoming's eyes turned into saucers. They looked at me like I was a god. My uncle and aunt were speechless. They didn't fully understand what a rank 1 dancer meant, but they understood the weight of 10,000 coins a month. My uncle's back-breaking labor and my aunt's sewing work combined didn't even come close to that. My uncle repeated the word good 3 times, his voice thick with emotion. My aunt just bit her lip, tears streaming down her face. I smiled, feeling like a normal 18-year-old for the first time in a long while. We went out to a restaurant that night. We ate until we were stuffed, then walked home under the stars, feeling a lightness we hadn't known in years. Back at the house, the kids begged me to teach them some moves. With my everlasting, unparalleled talent, my understanding of techniques was at the peak level. I could explain complex moves in the simplest ways. I tried to teach them the void-piercing finger, but it was too advanced for their young bodies. Instead, I taught them the thunderous fist. In just 30 minutes, both of them reached the entry level. A faint crackle of thunder sounded when they punched. I learned a C-rank technique. Xiaoming squealed, her eyes curving into happy crescents. "Let's see those bullies at school try me now," Xiaohai shouted. hands on his hips like a little warlord. I'm going to be the boss of the playground. I gave him a quick flick to the forehead. Don't you dare bully your classmates. He acted obedient for a second, but a minute later, I saw him on my aunt's phone, loudly scheduling a fight with someone. I shook my head. At least I knew Xiaoming could keep him in check. I went to my room and sat cross-legged on the bed. I hadn't asked Wu Linxian for those 7 different guidance techniques for fun. She had warned me that practicing multiple techniques at once would make my progress agonizingly slow. But I only cared about one thing she said, that doing so made a person invincible among their peers. Difficulty? That didn't matter to me. I had the system. I pulled up my status panel. Name, Su Hong. Talent, everlasting unparalleled blood chi. 123 plus, spirit, 26.5 plus, constitution, mortal body, 36.1%, plus, guidance techniques, heavenly eye, level 1, 5%, plus, skills, void-piercing finger, perfect, martial points, 0. I blinked. The heavenly eye technique had a level 1 tag next to it. Wu Linxian hadn't mentioned anything about levels. If these techniques could be upgraded, she definitely would have told me. That meant I was the only one who could level them up. My heart raced. To test my theory, I pulled out the other 6 manuals and began to practice. With my talent, it only took minutes. I closed my eyes, felt the energy flow, and then checked the panel again. The list of techniques was growing, and my power was about to explode. Thunder Guidance, Heavenly Eye, Water Marsh, Earth Soil, Wind Rider. I felt all 7 techniques click into place. They were all at level 1 now. I sat still, feeling the changes inside my body. 7 different types of elemental energy were drifting through my blood and chi, trying to merge. But I quickly hit a wall. These energies hated each other. They repelled one another like magnets with the same poles. Even though they lived in my body, I could only call upon one at a time. I held out my palm. A crackle of purple lightning flickered over my skin. Then, I tried to summon a flame at the same time. The lightning and fire clashed violently, sparking against each other until both vanished into thin air. I frowned. I had to find a way to fuse them. Now I understood why that martial artist Wu Linxian mentioned had stayed a rank 1 for decades. Trying to juggle 7 conflicting elements was a nightmare. Lightning and fire were both high-attack attributes. I decided to start there. I spent the rest of the night failing. Over and over, the energies exploded or fizzled out. It wasn't until the sky began to turn gray at dawn that I saw a breakthrough. I opened my palm wide. First came the lightning, then the fire. They roared at each other, fighting for space, but I poured every ounce of my focus into controlling them. Slowly, they wove together. I let out a long breath and wiped the sweat from my forehead. Even with my everlasting, unparalleled talent that had taken hours, I needed to see what this could actually do. I headed out to a local martial arts gym. I wasn't going back to the public testing grounds. I'd already broken a rank 1 testing pillar during my exam, and I didn't want to pay for more property damage. I found a rank 3 strength tester and took a deep breath. First, I tested the lightning on its own. I pulled back my fist, sparks dancing between my knuckles, and slammed it into the target. The numbers blurred past. 2,343. My eyes widened. I hadn't used any specific martial skills, just raw physical strength and the lightning attribute. During my official exam, I'd hit 1,863. Adding just one element had boosted my power by 500 points. That was equivalent to a mid-stage rank 1 fighter with 230 blood chi. Now for the real test. I concentrated, merging the fire and lightning into a volatile, swirling orb on my fist. I threw the punch. The rank 3 machine let out a dull, heavy thud followed by a crack of thunder. The digital display spiraled upward and finally froze. 3,041. I stood there, stunned. 3,000 was the benchmark for a high-stage rank 1 fighter, someone with at least 300 blood chi. I only had 123. The power multiplier from fusing elements was absolutely terrifying. As I walked out of the gym, I couldn't help but grin. Wu Linxian was right. At the same rank, I was going to be invincible. And this was only 2 elements. What would happen when I fused all 7? I went home and tried to add a 3rd element to the mix, but after 2 hours of zero progress, I realized the difficulty was scaling exponentially. My technique levels were too low. I needed more martial points. "Dinner's ready," my aunt called out. After a quick meal, I headed to school with Xiaoming and Xiaohai. They were still buzzing from the thunderbolt fist moves I taught them, shadowboxing the whole way. Once I dropped them off, I went straight to the teacher's office. "Su-hong, you're here," Li Ming said, looking surprised. "About those 5 exam fees. The principal said you can have a few extra days to pay." I reached into my bag and pulled out 30,000 blue star coins. "I have the money now, teacher." "Thank you." Li Ming looked at me for a long time, his expression softening. "Your aunt and uncle have done a lot for you, Su-hong. Work hard. There's still time before the college entrance exams. You might actually make it into a martial arts university." I nodded and headed to class. Chen Lin immediately threw an arm around my shoulder. "Man, you've been gone a few days. You missed a lot." "Like what?" I asked. "The genius class," he whispered, sounding bitter. "Principal Li has been giving them private sessions with Chen Tian. A bunch of them have already broken through to rank 1. They're even learning the Thunderbolt Fist." He sighed. "Word is Chun Shan and Li Tu have already reached proficient mastery. They can trigger 3 sonic booms with 1 punch. This monthly exam is basically going to be their personal highlight reel. We're just the background characters." I was about to respond when Li Ming walked into the room. "Everyone, follow me to the playground. It's time for the monthly exam." When we arrived, the field was a sea of students. Principal Li Chengshan stood on the stage, looking out at us with a serious expression. "Students," he began, his voice booming. "Today's exam is different. Because of the situation on the front lines, the Federation has decided to start an elite training camp. They want the best of the best. The resources there are beyond your imagination: rare pills, high-level manuals, and even grandmasters as mentors." The crowd erupted. Everyone started shouting at once. "The top 3 students in this exam," the principal continued, "will earn a spot in the Star City training camp." "Only 3. Chen Lin groaned beside me. "Well, that's it for us. Unless you're in the top 10, you don't even have a prayer." I looked at the stage, my pulse quickening. I didn't just want a prayer. I wanted that spot. "A rank 7 grandmaster as a mentor?" someone in the crowd yelled. "Our principal is only rank 3. This is insane." Everyone turned to look at Li Tu and Chen Shan, the stars of the genius class. The envy in the air was thick enough to choke on. Those 2 stood there, perfectly calm, as if their spots in the camp were already guaranteed. To them, the rest of us didn't even exist. The only competition they cared about was each other. "I was a bit slower than you with the Thunderbolt Fist last time," Chen Shan said, his eyes burning with confidence. "But in a real fight, the number 1 spot is mine." Li Tu didn't even look at him. "I hope you're still that confident after I knock you into the dirt." Over in the regular class, Chen Lin was practically drooling with jealousy. "Man, with those 2 monsters around, everyone else is just fighting for 3rd place. As for us, we don't stand a chance." He shook his head and sighed. I didn't say anything. I just watched them. The spotlight was on them for now, but the day wasn't over yet. "All right, everyone," Principal Li Chengshan shouted. "Draw your lots. The exam begins now." After the announcement, the principal walked over to Chen Tian. He looked frustrated. "Still no sign of that genius who triggered the 9 sonic booms?" Chen Tian asked, surprised. The principal sighed heavily. "I've searched everywhere. I checked every student who left the gym that day. Nothing. It's mostly just kids who have already given up on martial arts. I'm starting to think that genius isn't even from our school." He looked at Chen Tian, his expression grim. "Based on what you've seen, how would Li Tu and Chen Shan rank in that training camp?" Chen Tian thought for a moment. "Middle to lower middle tier. Students from other schools have already hit the mid-stages of rank 1. A few are even at the peak." The principal winced. "So my school's reputation is just a hollow shell this year." He couldn't stop thinking about that mysterious student. If only that kid belonged to First High, he wouldn't have to worry about being embarrassed. "Hey, Oldly, why the long face? You look like your wife just ran off." A mocking voice cut through the air. The principal looked up and scowled. It was Jiang Ming, an old comrade in arms he couldn't stand. Behind him stood 2 students, Li Yin and Li Ming. "Jiang Ming, what the hell are you doing in my school?" the principal snapped. Jiang Ming ignored the hostility and scanned the playground. His gaze lingered on the genius class for a second before he turned back with a smirk. I just came to see the talent. But honestly, Old Lee, the quality of your students is pretty pathetic. You're really letting the school's name down. None of your business, the principal spat. My students could still beat yours with their eyes closed. Jiang Ming's eyes lit up. He had been waiting for that. Is that so? I brought 2 of my disciples today. How about this? When your exam is over, let your top students spar with mine. The principal looked at the 2 students behind Jiang Ming. Li Yin looked incredibly composed and confident. Li Ming just gave a casual nod. After his recent ego-bruising encounter with a mysterious expert, Li Ming had realized there were monsters in this world he couldn't beat, but he was damn sure he could still crush anyone at first high. Jiang Ming smiled, acting like he was just being modest. My disciples aren't anything special. Li Yin just broke through to rank 1. He's proficient in the Thunderbolt Fist and subtle in the Raging Sea Spear. The other one, Li Ming, is a bit better. He's at the mid-stage of rank 1, subtle in both techniques, and his fist intent is at great success. It shouldn't be a problem for your genius students to handle them, right? The principal's face went pale. Those stats were terrifying. Li Tu and Chun Shan couldn't match that. He wanted to refuse, but Jiang Ming laughed. Of course, if your students are as bad as they look, I understand if you're scared. That was the breaking point. The principal's knuckles turned white. He couldn't back down now without admitting his school was trash. Fine. I'll let the winner of the monthly exam play with them. Just make sure your kids can handle losing. Jiang Ming just chuckled and led his disciples toward the lounge. He didn't even bother staying to watch the exam. He already knew no one here could touch his students. The principal cursed under his breath, looking at his students with a heavy heart. If only that 9-boom genius was real, he could have shoved those words right back down Jiang Ming's throat. But he had searched every corner of the school. That kid didn't exist. Meanwhile, the drawing was finished. Holy crap, Su Hong! Chun Lin shouted, looking at my bracket. Your first opponent is a pseudo-warrior. The whole class turned to look at me, their eyes filled with pity. To them, I had just pulled the shortest straw in the deck. It's okay, man, Chun Lin said, patting my shoulder. I'll be joining you in the loser's bracket soon enough. Our teacher, Li Ming, walked over and gave me a concerned look. Try your best, Su Hong, but don't push it. Don't get yourself injured and ruin your future training. I didn't say anything. I just looked at the arena. A voice called out, summoning me and my opponent to the stage. It was time to start. Number 665, Chun Peng. Number 666, Su Hong. Get to the stage now. The referee's voice cut through the chatter. I didn't waste time. I stepped onto the ring, feeling the cool surface beneath my shoes. My opponent, Chun Peng, was already there. He looked at me and smirked, clearly unimpressed by a student from a regular class. Are you going to walk off yourself? He asked, crossing his arms. Or do I have to throw you off? He didn't even finish his sentence. Before he could blink, the world blurred. In my eyes, he was moving in slow motion. I moved. One simple palm strike was all it took. The next thing Chun Peng knew, he was sitting on the concrete floor outside the ring. He looked up, completely dazed, staring at the stage in total confusion. What just happened? He muttered to himself. Wasn't my opponent just a rank 5 student? Referee, you call that a rank 5? Back in my class section, my classmates were frozen. Their eyes were wide, jaws hanging open. They had just seen me casually swat away a pseudo-warrior like a fly. Holy crap, since when did old Su get so fierce? Chun Lin stammered. Even our teacher, Li Ming, looked like he'd seen a ghost. He watched me walk down from the stage, his eyes filled with a shock he couldn't hide. As the exam continued, the elites from the talent class began to dominate. They tore through the regular students like paper. 2 names stood out the most, Chun Shan and Li Tu. They ended every fight in a single move. No one was surprised. They were the stars of the school, after all. But on the other side of the brackets, I was doing the exact same thing. I moved through the rounds with effortless ease. It didn't matter if my opponent was a high-ranking student or a pseudo-warrior. None of them could even react. One moment they were squaring up, and the next, they were sitting on the floor, wondering how they got there. Li Ming was watching me now, his expression shifting from surprise to utter disbelief. Is that really my student, Suhong? Chunlin's mouth was open so wide he could have swallowed a few eggs. As I kept winning, the crowd started to notice. Every time I stepped up, more eyes turned toward my ring. Every time I won, a wave of whispers followed. Up on the observation deck, Principal Li Chengshan leaned forward. Wait, that kid, he's a fresh face. He looked surprised to see someone from a regular class making such a deep run. He watched for a moment, then turned back to the talent class favorites. To him, I was just a lucky dark horse. However, Chen Tian, the rank 3 warrior, didn't look away. He narrowed his eyes, staring at my back as I walked away. That silhouette, he whispered. Why does he look so familiar? He felt like he'd seen me somewhere before, but the memory wouldn't surface. Time ticked by. The monthly exam reached its final stages. Almost every student from the regular classes had been eliminated. Only the talent class remained, and me. Is this the power of the talent class? The students whispered. Even if they aren't as good as Li Tu or Qin Shan, they're still on a different level. It looks like the regular students are finished. Then, the announcement boomed over the speakers. Number 666, Su Hong. Number 28, Li Kaishan. To the stage. The crowd erupted. Oh man, Su Hong's run is over. Li Kaishan is from the talent class. He's got a blood chi of 99. He's a hair's breadth away from being a rank 1 warrior. Pity filled their eyes. They respected how far I'd come, but to them, a regular student beating a talent class elite was impossible. If I were that good, I would have been in that class from the start, right? Those idiots. Chunlin cursed under his breath. He looked at me and whispered, Don't push yourself too hard, man. Li Kaishan is a beast. There's no shame in losing here. Li Ming patted my shoulder, a proud smile on his face. With the strength you've shown today, getting into a second-tier university won't be a problem. Just don't get hurt. I understand, teacher, I said with a nod. I stepped onto the stage. Li Kaishan was already there, waiting with his arms folded. He tilted his chin up at me. I saw your matches. Not bad. He grinned, radiating confidence. Too bad you ran into me. Tell you what, I'll let you have 3 free moves. Below the stage, Chun Lin couldn't take it. Look at this guy bragging. You're at the bottom of the talent class, Li Kaishan. Stop acting like you're number 1. Li Kaishan just shrugged. Even at the bottom of the talent class, I'm still better than anyone from the regular classes. That shut them up. He turned back to me and beckoned with his hand. Come on then. I nodded. I didn't say a word. I just moved. The speed was explosive. Li Kaishan's face went pale. He tried to raise his arms to block, but he was too slow. My leg cut through the air like a whip. A single kick sent him flying off the stage. He hit the ground hard, face first. He didn't move for a second, his mind reeling. Asterisk I lost. Me? A talent class student, taken out in one hit by a regular student? Asterisk. The entire arena went silent. It hadn't even been 3 seconds. Whether they were cheering for me or mocking Li Kaishan, everyone looked like they'd seen a miracle. Did that just happen? Someone stammered. Is Li Kaishan really that weak? I feel like I could have kicked him off too. Shut up, man. That was all Su Hong. He just took down a talent class elite. Back at my class, Chun Lin was vibrating with excitement. Li Ming, however, was staring at me with a look of pure shock. Su Hong, he's already a rank 1 warrior. The words hit the class like a bomb. A rank 1 warrior? He was just a student a few weeks ago. Up on the deck, the principal's eyes nearly popped out of his head. A rank 1 warrior from a regular class? This is a hidden genius. Suddenly, the principal looked like he wanted to cry. If he had found me sooner, he could have had Chun Tian teach me the Thunder Fist technique. I could have challenged for the top 3 spots in the school. I could have made it into the elite training camp. But now it was too late. I should have looked closer. The principal groaned, slapping his thigh in regret. Beside him, Chun Tian's face twitched. He felt like the principal was treating him like a workhorse, but his eyes never left me. That feeling of familiarity was getting stronger. Where have I seen those movements? The round ended. Only a dozen students remained. Every single one of them was from the talent class. Except for me. Every eye in the arena was fixed on me. Li Tu and Qin Shan, the top 2 geniuses in the school, glanced my way with brief surprise, but they quickly looked away. To them, beating Li Kaishan wasn't a big deal. They could have done it just as easily. They didn't think I could actually threaten their spots at the top. The other talent class students who had mastered the Thunder Fist were only slightly startled. They figured Li Kaishan lost because he hadn't learned the new technique yet. Still, the atmosphere shifted. People were whispering about a rank 1 warrior emerging from a regular class. Those in the talent class who hadn't mastered the Thunder Fist yet started looking at me with genuine fear. I was a wild card, a new competitor they hadn't planned for. I could see them praying under their breaths, hoping I'd draw a monster in the next round so I'd be eliminated. It seemed their prayers were answered. The referee called out the next match, number 666, Su Hong, versus number 5, Chen Xian. A collective sigh of pity rippled through the stands. Chen Xian was ranked 5th in the entire school. He'd broken through to rank 1 days ago, but more importantly, he had already learned the Thunder Fist. He was a true genius fighting for a spot in the elite training camp. The students who were afraid of me suddenly relaxed, their faces lighting up with relief. They'd rather fight each other than face me, mostly because I was an unknown variable. Now that I was up against Chen Xian, they were sure I was finished. Principal Li Chengshan shook his head, looking disappointed. He felt the outcome was already decided. He made a mental note to move me into the talent class after the monthly exam, but he didn't think I'd go any further today. Back in my class section, my teacher Li Ming was just happy I'd made it this far. My friend Chen Lin, however, looked miserable. Seeing me fly so high while he was still just a martial trainee made him feel left behind. I stepped onto the stage. Chen Qian wasn't arrogant. His eyes were heavy with focus. He wasn't going to take me lightly. The crowd leaned in, expecting a quick, one-sided slaughter. "Begin," the referee shouted. Chen Qian let out a low roar. He lunged forward, his feet cracking against the floor as he closed the gap instantly. He threw a punch, and the air literally hissed with the sound of a thunderclap. "Holy crap! Chen Qian is using Thunder Fist right out of the gate," someone yelled. "Su Hong is done. Why isn't he moving?" I didn't dodge. I didn't retreat. I stepped into his strike and threw a punch of my own. The crowd gasped, thinking I was suicidal. They expected me to be carried off on a stretcher. Even Chen Qian looked surprised that I was meeting him head-on, but he didn't pull back. He trusted the referee to save me if things got lethal. Our fists collided. A dull, heavy thud echoed through the arena. The students waited for me to fly backward. Instead, I didn't budge an inch. Chen Qian, however, was sent staggering back to the very edge of the stage. A pained, muffled groan escaped his lips. Then, the crowd saw it. Chen Qian's fist was a bloody mess, skin shredded and blood dripping onto the floor. The silence was deafening. How could a C-rank Thunder Fist lose to a direct clash? My teacher and Chen Lin were frozen in shock. The talent class students who had just been celebrating were now trembling. Even Li Tu and Chun Shan finally looked worried, their brows furrowing as they stared at me. Up on the deck, Principal Li Chengshan leaped out of his chair so fast it flipped over. He ignored it, his eyes glued to me. "Chen Tian, did you see that?" Chen Tian's face was grim. He nodded slowly. "That kid, Su Hong, he didn't use a single technique." He took a deep breath, his voice full of disbelief. "He must have a special physical constitution. His raw strength is insane. It's stronger than most mid-stage rank 1 warriors." The principal swallowed hard, and then a massive, manic grin spread across his face. "A special constitution. My school actually produced a monster with that kind of raw power." He started laughing, feeling like he'd just won the lottery. "Don't get ahead of yourself," Chen Tian warned, cooling the principal's excitement. "He's from a regular class. The best techniques he knows are Earth level. Even with that strength, if he faces someone who can channel elemental attributes, he'll be at a disadvantage. His low-tier skills will hold him back. He might not even make the top 3, and he definitely won't beat Li Tu or Chen Shan. They've already reached proficient level with the Thunder Fist." The principal's smile faded into a worried frown. The matches continued, and the field narrowed. Every time a new round of lots was drawn, the remaining students looked like they were facing a death sentence, praying they wouldn't hear my name. The principal held his breath, hoping I'd get an easy draw to secure my spot in the camp. Then the referee spoke. "Next match, Su Hong versus Chen Shan." The principal's vision went dark. Of all the people I could have drawn, it had to be Qinshan. He wasn't just a rank 1 warrior. He had already mastered advanced breathing techniques and the Thunder Fist. This was the ultimate test. The crowd was buzzing. Qinshan wasn't just a regular student. He was a monster. He had reached proficient level in the Thunder Fist. His blood chi was a staggering 120 points, and he could even condense elemental attributes into his strikes. To the other students, this wasn't a match. It was a slaughter. Principal Li Qingshan looked like he wanted to cry. He was convinced I was done for. Meanwhile, the students from the elite class were grinning, their earlier worries vanishing. Sure, I had beaten Qin Xian, but Qinshan and Li Tu were the undisputed kings of the school. They were on a completely different level. All eyes shifted to Qinshan as he stepped toward the stage. He took a deep breath, his expression unusually heavy. He had watched my previous fight, and I could tell he was feeling the pressure. Feeling weak already? Li Tu joked from the sidelines. Qinshan didn't look back. Just a bit surprised, that's all. Once I deal with Su Hong, you're next. I'll be waiting, Li Tu replied with a confident smirk. My homeroom teacher, Li Ming, was speechless. He never imagined one of his students from the regular class would make it this far, let alone challenge the top 2 seeds in the entire school. My friend Chen Lin looked like he was having an existential crisis. He actually slapped himself hard across the face, yelping in pain. Ow. Okay, it's not a dream, he muttered, clutching his cheek. Qinshan stepped onto the ring, his gaze locking onto mine. The referee didn't waste any time. As soon as the signal was given, the fight exploded into motion. Qinshan was fast. He lunged at me, his fists blurring as they tore through the air. Boom, boom, boom. 3 thunderous cracks echoed through the arena. Proficient level, I thought, my eyes brightening. I didn't use any flashy techniques. I met his strikes with raw, physical power. Bang, bang, bang. Our fists collided repeatedly, the sound of impact heavy and dull. For 10 seconds, we were locked in a stalemate, neither of us backing down. Qinshan's patience snapped. He wanted to end this quickly. Li Tu, watch closely, he roared. I was saving this for you. Suddenly, a flicker of orange light appeared on his knuckles. A thin layer of blazing fire wrapped around his fists as he swung. The students gasped. Elemental manifestation, someone screamed. He can actually channel fire. Even Li Tu looked surprised. Fire was second only to lightning in terms of destructive power. Principal Li Qingshan's heart sank. He knew I had a special constitution, but against elemental power, raw strength usually wasn't enough. He was already planning to beg the city lord for a special spot for me, fearing I was about to get seriously hurt. Old Li, look, Qin Tian shouted, pointing at the stage. Up on the ring, Qinshan let out a final war cry. Down you go. His fire-wrapped fist surged toward my face. I sighed internally. I had been hoping to see how far my physical body could go against a genius like him, but he was in too much of a hurry. He couldn't even last 20 seconds before going all out. What a shame, I whispered. I threw a punch of my own. But this time, I didn't hold back. As my fist moved, arcs of brilliant, crackling blue lightning erupted from my skin. Boom. Our fists collided. The lightning didn't just meet the fire, it swallowed it whole. Qinshan's eyes went wide. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Lightning attribute, he stammered. He didn't have time to say anything else. The sheer force of my strike blasted through his defense, sending him flying backward through the air. He hit the ground outside the ring and went limp, completely unconscious. The silence that followed was deafening. Thousands of students stood frozen, mouths hanging open. The reversal had happened in a heartbeat. Lightning, he's a lightning user? Principal Li Qingshan's tongue was practically tied in knots. Qin Tian shook his head in disbelief, a wry smile forming on his face. A special constitution with insane strength, plus the strongest elemental attribute. This kid is a freak of nature. Did you see that? The principal finally found his voice, screaming with excitement. He didn't care about the student he was originally looking for anymore. He had found something better. He's a monster. A total genius. Qin Tian nodded, though he looked thoughtful. It's strange, though. Did you notice? Su Hong didn't use a single martial technique. He just punched. Who cares? The principal laughed, his face turning red with joy. If he doesn't know techniques, we'll teach him. He just beat Qinshan. He's going to the training camp, and that's all that matters. Down below, the medical team rushed to the ring. The students were finally starting to recover from the shock. I thought he was a dark horse, one student whispered. But he's a damn dragon. If he can take out Qinshan like that, Li Tu doesn't stand a chance. Over in my class section, my teacher was still in a trance, his mind a complete blank. Qinshan eventually groaned and opened his eyes. He looked at me as I walked off the stage, his expression a mix of shock and total defeat. He had given it everything, and I had swatted him aside. What a monster, Qinshan sighed, finally accepting the truth. He limped back to the elite class area. Li Tu was standing there, his usual arrogance slightly dimmed. We spent all year fighting for the top spot, Qinshan told him, and this guy just comes out of nowhere and crushes us. You're both proficient in Thunder Fist, Li Tuesday. Do you really think you can win? Li Tu didn't answer immediately. He just stared at me, his eyes narrowing. Being proficient in Thunder Fist isn't enough, he muttered, his confidence finally wavering. Then I'll just have to take it to the next level, Li Tu said, his voice cold and steady. Qinshan froze. He stared at Li Tu, his breath hitching in his throat as a realization hit him like a physical blow. Wait, don't tell me. Your Thunder Fist, did you reach micromastery? Li Tu didn't say a word. He just smiled, looking like a man who already had the win in his pocket. Qinshan's face twisted with a mix of frustration and awe. He thought he had been the one hiding a trump card, but it turned out Li Tu was holding an even bigger one. I watched from the sidelines as Qinshan's shoulders slumped. He knew that with micromastery, the gap between Li Tu and me had suddenly narrowed. The outcome of the finals wasn't a sure thing anymore. The referee's voice cut through the tension, calling Li Tu to the ring. His opponent was the student ranked 6th in the entire school, a genuine talent. The crowd started buzzing immediately. Li Tu will win for sure, but how long will it take? One student asked. Suhong finished Qinshan in seconds. Li Tu and Qinshan were always neck and neck, another added. If Suhong can crush Qinshan, Li Tu doesn't stand a. He didn't get to finish. A sound like a localized thunderclap erupted in the arena. It was sharp, deafening, and sudden. Before anyone could blink, a figure flew through the air and slammed into the mats near the edge of the crowd. It was the 6th-ranked student. His eyes were rolled back in his head, completely unconscious. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, the stadium exploded. What the hell? Did you see that? It hasn't even been 5 seconds. 5 thunders. Li Tu really did reach micromastery. Look at his fists. That's metal elemental manifestation. The students were losing their minds. Metal element energy was known for its sheer lethality, rivaled only by fire and slightly behind my own lightning element. Everyone who thought I was a shoo-in for the championship started to second-guess themselves. Li Tu had just slapped them all in the face with a display of raw, terrifying power. With micromastery Thunder Fist and metal energy combined, was I really still the favorite? Up in the stands, Chen Tian looked surprised. The kid improved fast, he muttered. Micromastery plus metal manifestation versus Suhong's freakish strength and lightning element. This is going to be hard to call. Principal Li Qingshan rubbed his chin, a wide grin spreading across his face. He loved the drama. As the tournament progressed, the field thinned out quickly. After seeing what Li Tu and I could do, most of the geniuses in the top ranks simply forfeited when they drew our names. They weren't stupid. By the time we hit the semifinals, only 2 brave souls were left willing to test themselves against us. They lasted about as long as a candle in a hurricane. 2 dull thuds later, they were both off the stage, having failed to land a single hit. Finally, it was time. The moment the school had been waiting for. Final match, Suhong versus Li Tu, the referee bellowed. The atmosphere hit a fever pitch. The students split into 2 clear camps. On one side, the ordinary class students were screaming my name, their faces flushed red with excitement. Chen Lin had even ripped off his shirt, swinging it over his head like a madman while howling at the top of his lungs. Even my teacher, Li Ming, was caught up in it, his fists clenched in anticipation. On the other side, the elite class students were cheering for Li Tu. They were outnumbered, but they were desperate for their leader to reclaim their honor. Up on the observation deck, Chun Tian turned to the principal. Who do you have your money on? Chun Tian hesitated. Su Hong's strength is monstrous, but Li Tu mastered my Thunder Fist to the micro level. In the long run, Su Hong's special constitution makes him the better prospect, but right now, I think Li Tu takes it. He was biased, of course. Li Tu was his star pupil. I'll take Su Hong, the principal said with a mysterious smile. Why? Chun Tian asked. You saw that power. You're assuming Su Hong hasn't used a technique because he doesn't know one, the principal replied. But what if he just hasn't needed to use it yet? Remember when you taught the Thunder Fist in the gym? Su Hong was there. The principal paused, his eyes suddenly widening. He slapped his thigh hard. Holy crap, I just remembered. Su Hong was one of the kids who left the gym early that day. In fact, he was the very first one to leave. He was only there for a few minutes. Chun Tian stared at him. So, I asked his teacher about it back then, the principal said, his voice rising with excitement. Li Ming said Su Hong couldn't afford the registration fee and probably gave up. But what if that's not it? What if he left because he already learned it? What if he only needed those few minutes to master the whole thing? Impossible, Chun Tian snapped immediately. That's a C-rank technique. It takes hours just to memorize the flow, let alone perform it. You're telling me he watched me once and mastered it? Don't be ridiculous. The principal sighed, deflating a little. You're right. I got ahead of myself. It took me a whole afternoon with a tutor just to get the basics down. They stopped talking and turned their attention back to the ring. Li Tu and I stood 5 meters apart. The eyes of the entire school locked onto us. Li Tu gave me a faint, arrogant smile. Beating Chen Shan makes you the second best in this school, he said. I smiled back. Oh, then who's number one? Me. The moment the word left his lips, Li Tu lunged. He was a blur of motion, closing the gap in a heartbeat. His fist came whistling through the air, coated in a sharp, golden glow of metal energy. Asterisk boom, 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 boom. 5 consecutive sonic booms echoed through the stadium. He wasn't holding back. He didn't want a long fight. He wanted to delete me from the ring and remind everyone exactly who the king of Star City High really was.